Good evening. We're going to start our meeting. Michael will be late because he has a meeting at work, and he hopes to make it within the hour or so. We're going to start our meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Are there any emergency modifications?
There is none.
Then we'll need to approve the agenda.
I'll move to approve.
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Approval of the meeting minutes from February 7th. Action item.
I'll move to approve.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
None opposed? Shelley, I didn't hear your aye. Okay. Great. Student representative report, Jennifer Patino.
We're going to start with Nordhoff. Registration is underway at Nordhoff, and students are signing up for classes next year. Leadership's punch card recognition campaign is proving to be successful. We've already received a thank you note from a student who appreciated the recognition. The NHS Music Department proudly presents Grease, March 10th through the 19th at Mattilha Junior High School Auditorium. Shows are Friday and Saturday at 7 p.m. and Sunday at 2 p.m. We are offering reduced price tickets to all Ojai Unified School District students and their parents for the March 4th and March 5th show only. Prices are $10 for parents and $5 for students while seats are available. These tickets are sold 1 hour before the show at the Mattilha Junior High Auditorium box office. Mattilha Junior High School visited 6th graders this past week for registration. Kids were great, and we are looking forward to having them next year. This Wednesday, Carol and Javier will be discussing 8th grade expectations for the springtime, as well as promotion requirements. Miramani. Dr. Seuss Dress-Up Day is Friday, March 10th. Students will come dressed as their favorite Dr. Seuss characters. Prizes will be given to Best Character, Tallest Hat, Most Stripes, Most Red, and Best Homemade Outfit. Topa Topa. Topa held our annual read-a-thon on March 3rd. Students dressed in pajamas and enjoyed guest readers throughout the day in their classrooms. 6th grade is learning about the dangers of tobacco today. The tobacco bus is visiting Topa today, March 6th. And this Friday, March 10th, is our second trimester awards assembly. We will be honoring our Spelling Bee winners as well as our AR award winners. Miners Oaks. On Tuesday, February 28th, the Bravo Music Program brought the music van to Miners Oaks School. Our 4th grade students enjoyed hearing the instruments, and then they had the opportunity to try out playing different instruments. The Bravo program also pays for our 1st and 2nd grade students' music program. Every week, Ms. Laura comes and teaches music to Mrs. Walker's, Miss Bradley's, and Mrs. Wheeler's class. They love it. Lastly, Chaparral. Chaparral Democracy students are working on plans for a Chaparral open house to promote our school and to inform parents and the community of what we do here. The idea and plans so far have come 100% from the students. We have not settled on a date yet, but we are looking at mid-May. Hospitality students will be visiting Oxnard College to find out about the culinary program. Horticulture students have been very successful with their vermiculture, parentheses worms, and will be adding a greenhouse to their program this spring.
Great.
And that's it.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments on those events? Great. Thank you. I'm sure you have homework.
Yes, I do.
Good luck. Oh,
Grease is worth seeing.
Very true.
We'll talk about it when we get to the music
No, we got to
program.
talk about it now.
Oh, okay. Well, I do have some
And
public
then.
comments first.
Grease is the word.
So we've heard. Yolanda, did you want to speak?
She's gonna be third.
Oh, okay. Annika.
Hi. So the topic I would like to address is your item 7.5.4, the safe haven discussion. Thanks, Andy, for pointing me to your last month discussion. I got to watch that on the video a couple of times, and I really appreciate the thoughtful discourse that you carried on. I just want to say that I think, like Michael Shanahan mentioned in that last meeting, I feel very strongly that it would make a very significant impression in our community, in our families, in our immigrant families in particular. Whatever form of strong statement you care to form, whether you call it a resolution or not, literally reaffirming all the things that you established in the last conversation. The fact of the Fourth and Fifth Amendments remain in place, and no student or school campus should be subject to unlawful search and seizure, and the fact that the Plyer versus Doe ruling remains in place, and that all student information is confidential and shall not be shared. I think all of those statements are really important, because I think, like you said, Kevin, somebody said in your last discussion, not everybody knows that. And I think it's really important to simply reaffirm that, because it is a very disorienting time. What you may not be closely familiar with, what you may not be having conversations about on a daily basis that Yolanda and I are, is the level of extreme anxiety that is going on in our community on a day-to-day basis right here in Ojai. Our students are living in a heightened state of stress. Our immigrant students, immigrant families, there were rumors that everybody knows about ICE being here, and people are very uneasy. You may not be hearing that, but it's true, and they are, and I hear it when I put my calls out and talk to my immigrant family people. So I just want to register that the anxiety is real. And so I think that your motion, whatever it is you care to state, and we talked about this, Andy and I did yesterday, about an upcoming COPA meeting that we'll be holding, to allow the administration to give those messages directly to the parents that attend. But of course, not every parent will attend. And I think putting it in writing, putting it, like you mentioned, Kevin, on the website, making it very visible, our posture. It doesn't have to be it doesn't have to be a posture that's politicized, as Michael said. It doesn't have to be a posture of defiance against anybody who shall remain nameless. Simply that we stand in support of our student body and the families in Ojai. So that's what I want to let you know. I mentioned we're having the COPA meeting, and I also really want to. I don't want to take the wind out of your sails. You guys will have an announcement later on about that procedural concern regarding birth certificates, and I'm really, really pleased about that. I want to say thank you very much for catching that, listening, and considering the significance of eliminating one potential piece of concern for parents about how vulnerable their information may be on a school campus. So thank you.
I just want to say one thing, and it kind of came to my mind.
Stay or sit?
You can stand. I mean, because I don't know if you're going to be here for the discussion.
Right, I probably won't.
Okay. Which is that our minutes of the meeting, Kathy does a great job, but there is the use of a word in the minutes of that discussion that I think is not. It's probably accurate, but it doesn't reflect, I don't think, what really happened. As you said, you saw the video, which is it says the board believes it is sufficient to not do or not declare that we are a safe haven. I don't think sufficient is really where we were coming from. We felt like it was probably not, it was best to not do that for various reasons. But we'll get all into that, but we really had a fulsome conversation about all of us from the same exact perspective as you just reflected, just asking ourselves, what's the best thing we can do as a school board? That includes not putting a target on our school and having somebody decide to make an example of us. So we really want to do the very best thing that we can for our immigrant families, and we'll be having that conversation. But
Yeah,
I just, the word sufficient, I don't think we came at it from like, you know what, too much trouble to do a resolution. We're good. You know, it wasn't like that at all.
Thank you. I would only add, you know, I think the Santa Paula resolution is pretty neutral, and it's really a reiteration of existing law. And, you know, I personally like the language of that. I think we could, you know, that if you care to go in that direction, there's a way to say something without being defiant and making yourself a target. So I trust your judgment. I just want to say thank you. And just I really appreciate your comments, Shelley, because you brought in that the wild card about the birth certificates, you know, and it just happens that I had that same conversation the day I watched that video with Yolanda, and she's like, yeah, well, they have our birth certificates, and I said, really? I don't remember turning in a birth certificate. How many parents remember turning in a birth certificate when you have your kid?
How many forgot to do it?
Right? So, you know, like getting that stuff straight, I think is very significant. But those conversations are going on in the community. That's what people are losing sleep about. It's real. It's not a figment of, you know, imagination.
Yolanda?
You want English, Yolanda? No. ¿Puedes inglés?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I'm gonna try. Okay. Well, my name is Yolanda Flores, and I'm here. I'm sorry about my English. You know, I'm not really 100%, but I'm gonna try. I'm just here to let you know about. I'm talking with many parents, mothers, right, kids. Today I was in the library speaking with a mom with 3 daughters, and it's like, you know what? I'm talking about the same thing as Anika, and she says like, you know what? The other day I was in Bonds, and the daughter just came and said, yes, and we was outside trying to see what is the ice truck, you know, how they look, and we was so scared. And she touched her heart and says, Mom, sometimes I'm so scared. I don't want to go to school. So this situation is, and I'm sorry, but makes me feel terrible, because my daughter's born here, thanks God, but there is many really young kids, and they are suffering, they are so scared. So help us in one way or another, please, because we are a good people. I representing many Latinos. Maybe they are not here. There is many here in Ohio. Miramonte, Minor Sox. I'm a good mother. I try to do my best. I try to help in the school, selling snow cones, selling popcorns to help PTO. So there is more over there. So please help us, because this is a really sad situation for us to feel like we are not animals. We are not people who kill other people. We are good people. So I'm sorry. I feel really bad for many families. But whatever you do, just touch your heart and think in us, because we are a good people living here in Ohio with you together, right? So, thank you, and sorry.
No, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Any other public comments before we start the special presentation? Okay, our first presentation is on the district music program.
Okay.
Catherine White is going to.
All right. Well, thank you for having us tonight. I've got Lillian here and Colin with me, and a number of students here from Miramonte School that are getting an opportunity to showcase our 4th grade music program. So I'll just start out right away and tell you about our participation. So hopefully you all have a lot of handouts there. I'm sure I was firing stuff off at Kathy, and Lillian was firing stuff, so she's got quite a bit. So the good news is that despite the changes in the elementary personnel the last 3 years, our participation in the district/OEF funded programs has increased. The increase of 20% funding this year allowed us to implement a general music class for 4th grade students. This increased our participation by approximately 200 students overall in elementary. 1/3 of the Matilaha student body is currently enrolled in a year-long music elective. That's 90 students per trimester. Participation at the junior high level has increased each year over the past 3 years. And with the addition of the music exploration class, well over half of the students at the junior high school have received some type of music education, which is amazing. NORDOF participation numbers have increased significantly this year. This was largely due to the increase in the string orchestra and the marching band. The marching band increase was due to a concerted effort to recruit last year and an increase in overall participation in music at NORDOF. The offering of the chamber choir outside of the regular school day conflicts with other after-school programs. Anytime you have an after-school program, your numbers are going to go up and down depending on how many athletes and how many, it's just always an interesting number. But overall, the music participation in the district has increased at all levels, which is really, really an exciting thing to be able to tell you. We do have challenges, though, and I'll share those challenges with you. Our annual personnel changes at the elementary level has definitely impacted the quality of instruction our students have received, and a drop in student participation after 1 year in the program you can see that in some of the data that I shared with you. The last 5 years we have had beginning teachers, and as you are likely aware, beginning teachers have a lot to learn in their first year, second year, third year, fourth year, managing students, learning expectations, and delivering instruction. And you couple this with traveling to 5 different elementary schools and accommodating schedules at 5 schools and with at least a dozen teachers and plus all the administrators, and you have a significant challenge as an elementary school music teacher. In addition to that, each of our elementary teachers brings their strengths in areas of their training and different philosophies to their program. So adapting to the differences between the teachers is hard for the students, especially second-year students who may find themselves revisiting material that had been taught in the previous year, gaps in the instruction they receive, or lack of motivation because of changes to the program and personnel. So the lack of a the lack is a full-time position. If we were to be able to hire somebody full-time, I'm certain we would not have the turnover we have had the last 5 years or so. As you know, it's really important that they have a full-time salary because living in Ventura County is extremely expensive. We do find creative ways to supplement our elementary music teachers with hourly PTO-funded parent-paid programs, but it's not the same as having a full-time contract. We are extremely happy to have Colin this year. Colin is an 80% teacher, and again, we are filling every little moment he has with the parent-paid program, and we're hoping that at some point we can make him a full-time teacher and that he stays with us for a while. I'm not going to put you on the spot at all, am I? No. So at both the junior high and the high school level, conflicts in scheduling are a challenge as well. As course offerings decrease and single offerings of a class are available, difficult decisions have to be made by the students and their families. Am I going to take this class or am I going to stay in music? Allowing students to participate in the independent PE program at Matilaha has helped with some of the conflicts they've had there. The option of fulfilling the PE requirement with a sport has also helped to reduce the conflicts at the high school. After-school music program enrollment is a bit of a challenge. Of course, I shared that already with all the different sports programs. So at the high school, they're always dealing with that. So I am now going to turn this over to Lillian, and if you want to, or you can ask questions of me now about this, or wait till the end. What would you prefer?
I have one question. It's probably not a nice question, but I was going through the data, and I just wondered what's going on with TOPA. Is there not the PTO support, or is there not the...
And specifically, what are you looking at?
All the numbers are lower for TOPA and music participation.
Okay. Lillian has some information she can share on that for you. There are so many things that go into what those numbers look like and the number where kids go and what they do. So, yeah, it's complicated.
One of the things I just wanted, because I had asked the same question in an email, and one of the things that I had forgotten was that 6th graders leave. So you see the numbers drop, but you forget that the 6th graders went on to the music program at Matilaha. and there might not be as many sixth graders
Did you get that?
because of declining
Okay.
enrollment, like the numbers are, so there are some drops in
There are
numbers.
fewer sixth graders at TOPA than.
Yes, well, so think what happens is that just because they're listed as a beginning band member doesn't mean that they're actually a fifth grader. Some of the beginning band students are sixth graders. They either switched instruments, so they're back in the beginning program again, or this is the first time they've picked up an instrument. The other thing that is different at TOPA is that they do not want to have a mandatory music program for their fifth and sixth graders. Miramani is a mandatory program. Miners Oaks is a mandatory, and this wasn't one of the spreadsheets, but
Well, I think
Miners
that
Oaks is
answers the
strings.
question.
Yeah. But the third thing is it really is difficult to spend a year with a teacher that is new at their job and a kid that's on the fence or has self-control issues to be given a violin with 30 other students for a half an hour and being told, do this well so that you want to come back next week. That's kind of hard to do. So we need to find teachers who can gain some experience, comes with more experience than our last few teachers have come with, and are able to keep the kids engaged. We want the kids to come back.
I was forced to take piano lessons for 7 years before I enjoyed it.
Right. And one of our
I think when you said mandatory, that just answers
one of our
the
proposals is to have the fifth graders at
Actually,
least
yeah.
participate in some way. And where Colin comes
We have
from,
some
in
ideas.
San Juan's Capistrano, everybody participated in some fashion. So that is part of having a full-time student, or full-time teacher, is giving students that opportunity with a big shove sometimes, right? So you also got a copy of our concert schedule. At the elementary level, each of these concerts designed to meet a variety of goals in music education. Colin and I, helping Catherine, do 30 concerts every year. Students are required to perform in the 3 evening concerts. They don't all, but we sure try to get them there. And then in every school concert. At each of these concerts, but especially at the December concert, we see a real surge in them practicing, which gives them a lot more confidence, kind of snowballs in that way, and they get excited about being on stage. And it's a perfect incentive to really get them to practice at home and get their parents involved. Our school site performances are kind of like dress rehearsals for our evening concerts. Lots of jitters. We get rid of a lot of those. It's just really so much fun. I love it. And this provides those students an opportunity to perform in front of their peers. Not only is this exciting for the performers, but other students become interested in playing an instrument and when they see the schoolmates perform. So it is a recruiting tool at the same time. The evening concerts bring all the schools together. So we have all 5 schools show up at Nordup High School. 150 kids playing the violin at the same time. Hank will tell you it's his favorite night of the year, right? We do it 3 times. But the December concert might be a little difficult. The March Madness concert that I'll talk about in the middle, we add the Matilaha kids, so it really sounds good. And then by the time we get to our May concerts, there's a lot of learning that's gone on, and so they are very enjoyable. Students get to be part of a large ensemble. They experience how this cooperative activity becomes a huge event. Parents are able to see how important music education is. What they hear at home is not always what they hear in the concert, so it's a good experience for the parents as well. March Madness concerts are designed to give elementary students the opportunity to play with students that have been studying music for longer, because they're at Matilaha, and for students and parents to get to hear the Matilaha ensembles. So this is a great recruiting tool for us, for our junior high school program. I'll start talking to the kids now about what they want to do, and after they've had a chance to perform at March Madness and sit in the audience and see Matilaha, our numbers go up. So I will be asking them again, because we know that's what's going to happen. And of course, this is the chance for the parents to hear why they're encouraging their kids to be in music at the junior high school level.
Lily and I was surprised when my kids went through. You get to the junior high and you're playing every day.
Yeah.
And it just, they pop up so fast, and it really you could see all the kids just get so much more excited.
Well, in
about it.
grade school, they get 30 lessons all year long, provided there's not a field trip going on at that time, right? Or they're not sick or forgot their instrument, which happens. But in Matilaha, they have 180 lessons, right? So the difference, amazing right there. In April, we encourage our students to perform in a small solo and small ensemble concert. get kids playing Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, or kids that have been taking private lessons sit down and do Bach or Beethoven for us, and of course everything in between. Kids love to perform. It's not a talent show. It's really a recital. Last year we had 80 students perform, and we did it in 90 minutes. So,
Quick set changes.
it was quick. Beth was a big part of that. Each concert is an opportunity to work on life skills, working on project that entails group participation, cooperation, and it really is a form of public speaking to perform on an instrument in front of everybody. We hope that our concerts also entertain everyone. That's especially true when we did the caroling that I described in the other printouts, our assemblies, our spring showcase, and our promotion. We also distributed a summary of the district-owned instruments. This is a program that got started about 10 years ago or so. We currently have enough instruments in our inventory to rent to every student in the district in the 5th and 6th grade that would like to play. We do have 12 violins that are on loan from a private party. If we get this OEF grant, we'll be able to replace those and we will be self-sufficient. We have 212 instruments in inventory. There are 152 that are currently being rented out. Our small instruments rent for $90. The big instruments like the cello and saxophone rent for $180. That's about 30% of the cost, if you remember, renting an instrument from a music store. We have every violin out to a student right now, every cello out to a student right now. A few years ago, we had a huge surge in saxophones. That's kind of dissipated right now, but it all depends on that Bravo concert that Jennifer talked about. This year was Nestor Torres, a flute player. So we're expecting a lot of flute players this coming year.
Yeah, Jacob says he really got them excited.
Yeah,
about
Jacob says he got
saxophones
those
that year.
saxophones. Yeah.
Yeah.
So now we have a few extra saxophones, but it'll cycle back again. We collect about $9,500 in instruments rental each year. We do have about 20 kids on a scholarship, either full or part-time, so everybody gets to play an instrument if they want to. Of that $9,500, about $3,000 is for instrument repairs and maintenance, $3,000 for clerical support to run that program, and the balance of the money is either spent on instruments, other materials that we need, or some of the instruments belong to the school sites, so they have some the opportunity to decide how they want to spend that money. So that's my part, and now the main star. I mean the kids.
Calling in the kids.
Calling in the kids.
Good evening, everybody. I'm really grateful to have the opportunity to be here in Ojai, and especially because the community has been has kind of embraced me, and Lillian and Catherine have been really helping me get used to everything, and especially because Ojai is a community we all are very proud of the arts here, so that's one of the big draws for me to be here. I grew up in a small town up in Lompoc, California, and we didn't have music until the junior high level, and I was very fortunate to grow up in a musical family, and so I had a lot of opportunities to perform. And I truly think that helped me become a better musician and a more well-rounded student. I was an academic All-American in college, and I was nowhere near that in high school. So I really just the music really just tied everything together for me. And that's an experience that I want to bring to Ojai. My current position is a little different than the district where I came from. I came from Capistrano Unified School District, and they've had continuous music education for the last 50 years, from 4th grade through 12th grade. One of their educators at the high school level just won a Grammy Award for his choirs. And I think that we have the staff here that can bring that together and really just make a strong impact on the music community here. So that's why I'm advocating that we keep music as a very important priority from the 4th grade all the way to 12th. The next thing I want to talk about is the current offerings that we have. We start new this year with the 4th graders in a general music that's new. The idea of that is to give them exposure to note reading, rhythms, everything that they need to be a successful musician without the distraction of putting them on an instrument. Sometimes when you put a violin on their shoulder, everything goes out the window just because they're trying to learn how to hold it right. So we can use instruments like rhythm sticks and boom whackers and all kinds of things, clapping, recorders, where they're not distracted by kind of the techniques, and they can just focus on making the music, learning those rhythms. The next year, they'll have those rhythms solid and they'll be ready to learn an instrument. So we start with the 4th grade. In the 5th grade, they can choose from beginning band and beginning strings. The 6th grade, they can choose advanced strings and advanced band. There's PTO and PTA funded classes that I do also. They're the choir, and then there's the guitar class, and then Miramani has a piano lab that the 5th graders can do. So that makes 9 different classes that I do every week.
Every day.
9 different
Every
classes.
day.
Every day. So anyway, I would like to show you guys. I have some students with me today. They're really excited to be here and show you how to use our boom whackers. And those are some of those rhythm instruments, and we start learning melody with those too. So we'll start with that. If you guys would like to come up.
4th graders?
You guys can actually,
You want to face that way.
how about you guys? How about you sit down in the front? Who are my ostinato people? Can you guys go on this side? So we have the opportunity to learn real musical terms as well. We learned that an ostinato is kind of a steady bass line. And these guys are going to provide that for us.
Are you playing?
Do one of you guys want to hit one of those things? Show them how it sounds. They're really cool.
And where did you get this at? Colin?
So my mother is a music teacher. She let me borrow them. So let's get our ostinato started. We start with our G's, which is the green one, and then we go to our D's. That's good. That's ostinato, steady bass line. We're going to bring in our melody next. We're going to start with our D's, right? Here we go. 1, 2, 3, and go. Awesome. You want to try it again? So that's how the boom whackers work. And if you guys would like to show some of these guys how they work, you want to show them how they work? Anybody? You want to show them? Yeah.
Alright, so the way these basically work is that they're just tubes of plastic, and the longer they are, the deeper the sound. Like, if you put a cap on the end, it's deeper, but it's still the exact same note, so like this. If we're gonna take this off, like that. Or put it back on. I was so on.
That's okay, Peter.
We believe.
So, that's basically how it works because the longer the tube is, the longer it has to, the longer the sound has to travel through the tube, which makes it a deeper sound.
So each color coordinates to a specific note?
Yeah. So there's different red ones. There's different red ones because there's a longer red one and there's a shorter red one. We haven't really done those yet. We're planning on doing that soon.
Yeah. So they do the full 8 notes of the scale, of the major scale.
Yeah.
So the red ones are the ends of the octave?
Yes, so we go a C major scale from low C to high C. And they even come in chromatic pitches too. So, okay.
Very fun.
Thank you guys.
Hey, you guys want to introduce yourselves and who you brought with you? Okay, I'm going to start over here. Go ahead, sweetie. What's your name? Tell them your name. Tell them your full name and who's with you. Here, did you bring anybody with you today?
Yeah.
Your mom's here? Okay. Go ahead.
My name is Baylor Grat. My mom and my dad and my brother are here with me.
Thank you, Baylor. Go ahead.
My name is Kristen and my mom is. My name is Joanna. My brothers, my 3 brothers, my mom, my dad.
Excellent.
My name is Ayla and I only got my mom.
Mom's here.
My name is Peter Joseph Kelly and I brought my mom with me.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
I want some of those things.
Stressful.
Yeah. I'm sorry. Did you have any questions before calling? Lily? Were there any questions for us?
I guess my question is really you and Andy. I apologize. I just don't have a firm sense of how we're funding music. Colin in particular mentioned PTO kind of subsidizing a little bit.
Yes.
How's that working?
Colin is an 80% contract. 20% of that is funded through Ohio Education Foundation. This is the 3rd year of their funding. The PTOs pay him an hourly rate, which is the teacher hourly rate that's approximately $30 per hour.
So you're on an 80% contract with the district.
Correct.
And then the PTA is sort of paying on the, okay. But I guess my question is, I thought maybe it all blended together for one salary, but it's not like that. And so in terms of benefits, what are we doing with that? You just get the 80% benefits, and then you have to pay for the rest?
Yes.
So are you on, if like healthcare, you have to pay for 20% of it out of your own pocket?
Yes.
And just one clarification, Jan and I talked about this a couple of days ago. On the chart, we have Thomas right at 80%. Those are correct each year in terms of what I would call regular music classes. Right?
Correct.
He's been full time since he's come. The additional 20% the first 2 years was math.
That's correct.
And this year we have the
elective with
full-blown elective wheel music appreciation.
270 more students.
So he's actually full time at Matilla High in music, if it's counting, obviously count that as music. And so Matilla actually has 120% of music, the bill there.
I just wonder if there's a, kind of more to you, like if there's a way working with PTAs to be able to make a full package so that he's a teacher within our district at 100% and doesn't have to pay for his benefits.
It's certainly something that Catherine and I are talking about, a few possibilities right now, and as far as being able to reach out to the PTAs and PTOs, I think that's certainly something that I've heard a lot of interest in. So,
and I also want to mention, we are very fortunate that Ohio Education Foundation has picked up 20% of his salary for the last 3 years. There's never a guarantee from year to year that they're going to be able to afford to do that. So it's kind of a soft funded program. So we may be looking more at 40% if OEF doesn't have the money to fund him.
Is there an indication about next year for OEF?
I have been told by a pretty reliable source that they will cover another 20% for next year, but they'd have to look at the following year because they're raising the money right now for next year.
And that's actually, Kevin, I think one of the reasons we had those special budget meetings was talk about, at some point we do make those choices, do we increase our music program at the elementary level by 20%? And what happens, well, then we can't reduce maybe the numbers in average class size from 29 to 28. We have to keep it at 29 so that those are the kind of choices that we might look at when we get there.
Yeah, I was interested to see Greg Bayless's email today. I wasn't aware that we are the only, to our great credit, school district that actually has live music in our musical. I do think that this district is a really musically outstanding district, and I love that about the district.
Absolutely.
And I want to, as a board member, do what I can to keep that going.
Thank you. Oh, we all agree. We're there with you. We'd love to have that happen. Get Colin to 100%. Colin stays.
Can we also,
and he can afford to pay his rent. He doesn't have to pay 20% of his benefits.
to walk away. We could do a plug now for
that would be good. Yeah, go right ahead. You want to plug it?
Sure. I haven't seen it yet. I'm going this weekend, but
well, Hank has seen it.
I have.
And Kevin, you've seen it. Maybe you guys can.
Well, I'm conflicted. I have to recuse myself. It's fabulous. As all the musicals are. What I love about going to the musicals is it draws such a diverse group of people from the community. It's never just parents of kids in it. It's never even just parents of kids in the public schools. It's the whole community. And I see people at those things, I'm like, how do you even know about it? Are you kidding me? It's always on my schedule. Yeah. You heard this guy Hank Bangser was there. You know?
Yeah, but actually, I was not quite as important as the high school principal. I want to. Catherine, you got to talk about Greg.
Yeah. Well, we have a special guest. We have one adult in the cast, and that is our high school principal, who has an amazing voice, and he's quite good at Teen Angel. So you have to come see him.
Better than what's his name in the movie? What's it, Valley?
Yeah, and in just the costume itself, you have to just come see him in that.
So is this
too?
Huh?
He's got the moves.
He does. He's got the moves. He's got the voice, and he is thoroughly enjoying himself up there.
Is this the biggest cast you've had?
This is definitely up there with one of the biggest casts we've ever had. It may be the biggest cast. We have 49, including Greg Bayless. We have 10 techies that are working on this show. So it's a huge cast, and we knew we could do that because we had such great dance numbers. We had a smaller pit, which was nice, which allowed us to put the steps down the side. Because when you come to the show, you'll see that we have to put dancers down the sides and in front because there's just too many of them for the stage. And the dance numbers are really, really fun to watch because there are so many of them, and it's great choreography. Julie Hammond's doing an excellent job with that. Yeah. So definitely come out and see it.
The pit's smaller because it's like a rock band this time, right? It's not a full orchestra.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And who comprises the orchestra band?
I don't know the names of everyone that's in there.
But the construction is both our own students.
There are some of our own students, yes, and then there's some professionals too that are in there as well.
Ryan Zinn,
Alumni.
they're playing guitar.
There are. That's right. Brett Halverson's an
Yeah.
alumni. I will say too that if you're planning to go, you need to make sure you get your tickets. We had 2 sold out shows this weekend. We opened Friday night. We sold out Saturday and Sunday, and that has never happened that we've had sold out performances our first weekend. So it's pretty hot out there in the community right now. We're really excited. So come see it.
So that's Friday, Saturday at 7, Sundays at 2.
Sundays
For the
at
next
2.
2 weekends.
Yes, that's correct. Okay. All right.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, moving on to personnel, 7.1.1, variable term waiver for employment of high school world languages teacher. Any questions? Okay, then we'll ask for a motion to approve that waiver. A second? All those in favor? Aye. None opposed. 7.1.2, Resolution 161714, release of temporary or hourly certificated employees. And do you want to do 7.1.3 at the same time?
No, do that separately because they're really two different entities.
I know we want to just briefly give information on this. I know the board probably knows, but for those at home.
Andy, why don't you go ahead and do 7.1.2? I'll do 7.1.3.
Sure. So this is an annual resolution that comes before the board in March. What this is for is we have a number of our staff who are either in temporary positions. That temporary position may be as a result of a leave of absence that they're filling in for someone else, or in hourly positions. And so based on Ed Code and the nature of the position, we're required to bring this forward each year. We're confident that you will not be seeing, all of these staff actually remaining on this list through the end of the school year and into the summer. But what this means is that we are required to give notification by March 15th of the possibility that, given again the status of their employment, they may not be returning for next year.
So a motion to approve 7.1.2?
I'll move to approve.
Any second? All those in favor? Aye. None opposed. 7.1.3, resolution for the reduction or elimination of particular kinds of certificated services.
So this is the construction that comes annually also, as Andy said, by March 15th. Each board must approve this kind of resolution with an exhibit, and then there are specific people, right, and the board knows who they are, who will receive a letter. And the letter does not say you will not be returning next year. It says you essentially may not be, subject to further analysis through a May 15th deadline, so do it again. And then after May 15th, you can't be certain at that point, we can still bring people back who are on this original list. But you can't be on a May 15th list if you're not on the March 15th list. I'm very, very proud, again, to say, I'll say it again, that number 3.2 is actually 1/20th of the number that I saw when I came here, and for a couple of years about 1/10th, 15th or so of years back when we had to make significant cuts. And in fact, we're quite certain that everybody on the list, who's on the list now, will not be, all of them will not be with us next year. They'll be back. Some will be back, hopefully all will be back. Probably not all, but a good number. And at this point, again, as James said earlier, we've just gone through the 2 budget study sessions. And with a lot more work to do, we'll take that up in a couple of minutes here on the upcoming agenda. But we haven't done staffing for next year yet. We are looking hard to know what that kindergarten enrollment will be, because that will be the driver, particularly for the elementary classroom teachers. As you can see, 1.6 are on the list now. We also have some other personnel moves, as we always do, in addition to that 1.6. So my recommendation is that this group be approved at this point. Hopefully in May we'll be able to have some of these return even as soon as that.
Any questions? A motion to approve 7.1.3?
I'll move to approve 7.1.3.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. None opposed. 7.3.1, student achievement goals for the local control accountability plan. I wonder who we're going to hear from.
Oh,
Hi, Marilyn.
Hello. I'm always following something. I love those 4th graders. And then last month it was the Steel Magnolias. I mean, it just goes on and on, doesn't it?
It's the best show in town. Well, except
Gosh,
for
it is. Yeah. If you remember, in 13-14, the state of California implemented the local controlled funding formula, so LCFF, and that's the new formula for funding education. The LCFF requires districts to develop a local control accountability plan. So the LCFF is up here, and the plan is a requirement of LCFF, the LCAP. And the LCAP really describes the educational goals for the district, but it also connects district spending to those goals. So you have to delineate what monies are being spent for what goals and what actions. One key aspect of the LCAP process is the engagement of stakeholders. So you, the school board, you're one of the stakeholders. So tonight I wanted to provide you with an update of the LCAP. So as we go through, it'll be a real short update. Ask questions as we go along. It's kind of a learning experience. You probably got in your packet a graphic organizer like this. Yep. Graphic organizer.
You got it.
The LCAP describes the educational goals of the district, like I mentioned, but the goals have to reflect these 8 priorities. So our LCAP has 4 goals, and those 4 goals reflect those 8 priorities. For example, one goal, the first goal, which is student achievement, has many of these priorities in it. Student achievement, implementation of Common Core, core access. So sometimes a goal will have 2 or 3 priorities. Sometimes a goal may only have 1, like parent involvement. That's our 3rd goal. So the priorities have to be there. We have to address the priorities and in our goals. So any questions about the priorities? What goes into the priorities, or?
The priorities that I understand are dictated by the state.
Correct.
Okay.
7 are actually dictated by the state. The 8th one says other outcomes. So when we had our first LCAP in 2014, as a result, and I think many in the audience and you on the board have heard, at one of our stakeholder meetings, which was a COPA meeting, those parents had a real interest in student wellness, not just physical wellness, but emotional wellness too. So it was really as a result of that stakeholder meeting that we decided as a district that that would be one of our priorities, so student wellness. So that's our 4th goal on the LCAP is student wellness. And it includes both physical health and mental health. And I think all of you know, we set a real high priority, I think, on student health with our anti-bullying program, Food for Thought, all of those kinds of things. It's a real, kind of like the arts, real important to us, I think. Now, in addition to the priorities, I also gave you a timeline. And I want you to think of the timeline instead of a vertical document, which it is. I want you to think of it as a cycle, because really the LCAP is a cycle. We don't just start in the fall and end in June when it's approved by the school board. It's really a cycle of reflection and then adaptation and then growth. And then we keep going with that cycle. So every fall, we might evaluate the progress of what we did the year before. And we start engaging stakeholders. Then we might look at our goals, our actions, and our services from the current LCAP, consult stakeholders, and adjust to reflect input. And I'll give you an example. We had a stakeholder meeting the day after the school board meeting, February 8th. And as a result of the stakeholder meeting, that meeting just last month, I began to look at the student achievement goal, which is goal 1, and I thought, we don't have anything about technology, but yet, as we sat here at the stakeholder meeting, several parents or people who were here at the stakeholder meeting mentioned about access to technology. So we're going to include that for a new action underneath goal 1, student achievement, increased access for students to technology. And it's as a result. So you keep changing and adapting as you get input from stakeholders. Now remember, our stakeholders, that's one key aspect of the LCAP is stakeholder engagement. It's not just parents, it's not just community, but it could be union members, it could be staff at staff meetings. school site council meetings. We use every opportunity we can to engage stakeholders. So that's.
I was just wondering,
Yeah.
because of the previous comment, are the arts included as a
one of the
goal
goals?
under the priorities?
No. The 4 goals are student achievement, student engagement, parent engagement, and student wellness. Now, it doesn't mean you can't put the arts, say, an action item
Or even under
student achievement.
Yeah.
Because
Or-
obviously, or even the student engagement, obviously if students are connected, art, music, drama, athletics, those are all things to enhance student connectedness. So they come in subtly, I guess, well, maybe not so subtly, but we do look at all of those things as far as student engagement and student achievement. But it's not a specific one of our 4 goals, but it can be an action under that goal. So think of the timeline really as being more of a cycle. I really want to emphasize the fact that it never really ends. You know, we get test results in August, then we start looking at our goals and start seeing did we meet some of those goals and how did we do? We look at our progress. Now, as I mentioned, it's really important to engage stakeholders all year. And one thing we did this year was we developed a brochure that we handed out at back to school night. That's how we started. We handed it out at back to school night. Some of you may have picked up a copy of back to school night. I also have a brochure in Spanish. And then after back to school nights, we also handed out the brochure. It was a real good vehicle for communicating with stakeholders because pretty easy to read. I think it's so important that we continue to educate our stakeholders about the LCAP. Some people don't know what it is, so I think we have to kind of bombard them. So after we handed these brochures out at back to school nights, then we also, you know how people play on the tennis circuit? Well, I was on the meeting circuit, school site council, PTO meetings, back to school nights, handing out these brochures. But I think, you know, we have to get the word out there that this is what we're doing, and it's a very transparent process. So, any questions? That's your update.
LCAP meetings, and the stakeholder meetings, have you had maybe members without kids in the schools by any chance? Do you have business members?
No.
Anybody like that ever show up?
Not at the last one we had. We're going to have another stakeholder meeting on March 20th, and that's on Monday night, 6 to 7:30. And instead of holding it here, we're holding it at Miners Oaks. I think sometimes it feels a little more welcoming to people if they can go to a site. So we're going to have it at Miners Oaks. But members of the community, maybe last year, Shelley, but yeah.
How was the turnout at the last one?
Not very good.
How many?
Including Tiarza, you have half of the.
Yeah, Andy was there. Hank. Teresa.
Oh, yeah.
Tiarza was there. She had to leave to go to a junior high meeting, right, Tiarza? And then we had a Miners Oaks parent, a Miramani parent. They're both on the parent advisory committee. And Matilaha parent. Matilaha parent.
Wow, Topa's
Fell down on the job.
at 2 Topa. They used to show up with.
Well,
a Nordhoff parent as well.
Oh, yeah.
Lori.
Yeah, that's right. Lori Hammer. She's a Nordhoff parent.
Well, Sage still counts.
Yeah, Sage show.
She was there.
But she's not a
She was the Matilaha.
She was.
She was the organizer.
Yeah, that's it. She'll
Yeah.
always
Topa
be.
parent.
She'll always
Exactly.
be a Topa.
Exactly. So I'm hoping for a little better turnout, maybe at Miners Oaks. We'll see. Any other questions? Okay, I'm always around if you have questions or if you want to look at the LCAP, the current LCAP, we're working right now on the annual update. The annual update's also really important for transparency because the annual update has the goals from 16-17, the goals from this year, and then you have to identify the goal, the action, and what did you do? Did you do what you said you were going to do? So I'll just give you a quick example. One of the, under student achievement, one of our goals for 16-17 was offer a summer school for our English learners K-5. Did we do that? Yes, we did that. How much did it cost? I think it was $42,000 or something, I can't remember. 86 students showed up. So you have to be real specific when we start filling out the annual update, giving real detailed information so stakeholders can look at that and say, yes, they did what they said they were going to do, or they tried to do it and it didn't work, or something. Okay.
Do you think it would help at all in terms of attracting people to have a Spanish translator there? And then
we had one at this stakeholder meeting.
Oh, you did?
And we're going to have one at the one at Miners Oaks. Yeah, always.
Were there any Spanish speaking, people that only spoke
Not
Spanish?
this one, but I'm hopeful that if we have it.
Right, there's someone there who speaks Spanish well, but she also speaks English.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, the person there is a staff member of ours who's our interpreter as well. And so we sent her to training over the summer up in Santa Barbara, and so she is one of our backups behind Patty, our primary interpreter. But she's also a parent. This individual is also a parent in the district, so a parent, business office staff member, and
Nirmani parent.
Yeah, exactly. So
she also did. We had a kindergarten readiness night for parents, all future TKs and Ks, and she did the translating for that night too, and it was real helpful because we had quite a few Spanish speakers.
I just want to say, it can be really hard to take these state mandated programs and make them meaningful at a local level. It looks like you've really done a lot to try to make it our own. So
I try to really involve the leadership team because they're really on the ground. They're the boots on the ground. And I just sort of translate what they give. I ask them, how much did you spend for intervention programs and so on. But it's really a joint effort and a team effort, but I appreciate the compliment.
Although, not to play devil's advocate, but these meetings, and I think the way you've brought them forward, you're not presenting this as some kind of arcane thing that we're having to accommodate some state thing. We're like, hey, all you folks that are our stakeholders, what do you care about? That's not, really, that's kind of an engagement on the lines of who cares about these important things.
Oh, it should be meaningful,
yeah.
Right?
I think that's really one reason it's so important to, when you get stakeholder input, like we did at the COPA meeting that night 2 years ago when they were really concerned about student wellness, and we included that. In fact, it was one of our main priorities. So I think it's really important for stakeholders to see their input is valued. And just like the stakeholder meeting a month ago when technology kept coming up. And so, we need to put that under goal 1. Access to technology. So I think that's part of the transparency.
Thank you for all your work.
But I think what you're saying, and I have to agree, is that we get crowds who are angry that we're going to do something, but we don't get crowds to ask us to, to engage in anything.
You're right. When you're about to close the school or something.
We have to say something controversial first, and then we get feedback.
Maybe if we went public and said we will not listen to our stakeholders.
So, I do have a question. How the LCAPs? How do you publicize them?
The meetings. Okay. It's on the district website and it's on each site's website, and then I I always send an email to principals with a blurb that I want them to put in either their weekly newsletter. I know that elementary have weekly newsletters. Greg has his WAG, Javier has his week at a glance. And so they put it in their newsletters and on their website. So
I wonder if there's a way we can give it our own title and then say LCAP, something a little more
I felt
marketing friendly.
Like a bait and switch. I thought of that when, how people will come to meetings if there's food. I did think about that because, when you break bread with people, it brings everyone together. And so I did actually kind of think about that. It wasn't exactly a bait and switch, but it was an enticement.
And we've got Danny, we can ask him to bring some bread.
Yeah, we still could do something. Yeah. So, but I know exactly what you're saying, Jane.
Well, one thing is I wonder logistically if we could make, bring the LCAP meetings into our meetings, make them part of our meetings on months where we purposely just don't schedule a whole lot of regular business and have it be part of a regular meeting of the board, and folks would maybe there would be more of a sense of significance or something.
Mm-hmm.
And we could schedule something controversial then.
You may have heard I had this idea for these budget study sessions that were killer.
My father-in-law sent me an article.
I thought that was Angie's idea.
One board member was threatening the other board members. So that brought a lot of,
brought a lot of, I don't know if I want to facilitate that.
I think you need to make it part of the musical. That's how you do it. You do an intermission LCAP session.
Yes, music.
Opening.
That would not be, I would not be doing the music part.
Did you wanted to say
No, it's
something?
okay. I'll find it. I'm okay. Thank you, Marilyn.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Since we're on 7.3, I'm going to keep there. 7.3.2, 3, and 4. I'm going to put them together unless anyone objects. Not that they are to be smashed together, but they're each recognitions that I think are important. The first is recognition of Women's History Month, and that is sort of like we did for the African American Month, the recognition of the contributions of women to our history and our daily lives, and it's a wonderful resolution. The resolution in recognition of Music in Our Schools Month, which goes right along with hearing about our music program tonight, and our commitment to have a great program in our valley, and recognition of Arts Education Month. Someone mentioned how important music is in our valley, and arts are very important in our valley. And so although these are sort of statewide recognitions, I think they're particularly important in our district. And so for us to make these resolutions is really fun to do.
Well, I'll move approval.
Any other comments beforehand? About how wonderful women are, perhaps?
Women are fantastic. As well as music and the arts.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve 7.3, 0.3, and 0.4. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. None opposed. Andy, if you don't mind, before we move on to 7.4, I'd like to just move ahead for some of our guests and cover 7.5.4, update on the status of the safe haven issue. We had a couple of public speakers earlier, and I think we have a couple more that want to speak. Do you want us to start talking and then speak, or would you like to begin the discussion?
Would that be okay? So
Sure.
we can get this one back to homework?
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Ava, and I'm a 4th grade student in San Antonio. Thank you for letting me to speak today. On behalf of my family, my dad, Danny, my mom, Tiaza, my sister Karis, my brother Cole, and my gam Sonia, we would like to express our full support for the Ojai School Board to adopt a resolution that states a commitment to protect all students on our school campuses, regardless of their immigration status. A resolution would send a strong and powerful message locally, nationally, and around the world that Ojai is a community that cherishes inclusion, diversity, and respect for all of our friends, families, and neighbors. It will show that a community as small as Ojai is willing to join a bigger voice when it comes to expressing a commitment to keeping everyone feeling safe and welcome. I hope you join other districts in Ventura to also sign a resolution, and I hope you encourage other school districts in California and across the U.S. to do the same, because creating a world of compassion starts right here at home. Thank you.
Well, you're very well spoken. Thank you for sharing that. It's very clear, and you're a good speaker. I appreciate taking the time to come forward.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, David.
Would you like to give us your update?
Would I do it now? Okay.
Sure.
Sure. So, well, we've heard comments tonight that are powerful, poignant, in all different age groups and from different ethnicities. And having worked with Yolanda a lot over the last number of years, I assure you that this is not even close to the first time she's been fully engaged in an issue. In fact, I say she's one of my better prompters, along with Annika and Marianne and some others. So I've written to the board pretty extensively about this issue and updated them really since we came back from winter break. I'm not going to go back through all the history again. I don't want to be redundant, but you know that this issue began with certainly not a directive, but a fairly strong statement from Tom Torlakson to have school districts consider the kind of resolution, Ava, that you talked about. And since then, I'm sure every district in the state has wrestled with the idea about how best to address the matter. So I've kept the board abreast of just the numbers of districts in the 20 districts in the county. Right now, I actually asked Andy to do a little research this afternoon. I was otherwise occupied. And Lori, I'm giving a little warning here. I'm going to ask you to give us an update on what happened after I left. I heard we had I consider it a major victory, but let's call it a victory. Okay? And so I'll ask you to help us out when we get to the next agenda item 755. In any case, so not that it's an absolute guideline to use, but there's a relatively growing minority of the 20 districts in the county that have adopted some type of resolution, either something pretty close to verbatim on the safe haven approach or some other approach. I think we're getting to the 7, 8, 9 range, depending on how you sort of read the resolutions. And this issue has been now on our agenda 3 times, in January, February, and now March. In addition, we've had very long conversations around this table when we have our administrative team come together, usually sort of mid to the end of the month. And I have pushed principals, and they've been really great about informing each other about what is going on in the schools relative to the kinds of fear and anxiety that in particular Yolanda talked about, and Annika, of course. I guess I said there are a few things I want to say, and you know that I'm not bringing a recommendation. It's not really that type of issue. I'm not bringing a recommendation to the board to either have a resolution or not have a resolution, because this is clearly a board community issue. It's not something that I have to weigh in on in a very aggressive way, because it's just not that kind of educational matter. It's a very critical issue in our country, but it's something that I wanted the board to wrestle with, which they really did in a very fine fashion a month ago. And it's important to remember too that there are 2 elements to this. There is the community element and there's the school element. And obviously they cross over. There are synergies and relationships. When you're a mom of a 9-year-old in school, you're also a mom of a 9-year-old out there in your own home and in your neighborhood and in your community. But it's important to remember that we have different lives here. And as recently as this afternoon, I happened to be down in Ventura with Lori and some others, including the city manager in Ojai, and I asked him, have you addressed this issue? And what's going on in the state relative to circulars and other commentaries out there, you know, for city managers, for mayors and city councils. And it was interesting. He said, not that much. Not that much. Which that surprised me a little bit. But in any case, it may be that we are feeling a greater sense of comfort right now because we live in California. Right? And there's been such a strong position taken by the state about, you know, you fill in the blank, hiring Eric Holder. We will make sure that our citizens are safe from intrusions from the federal government, et cetera. So, you know, those are all sort of part of the infrastructure. I guess the thing I'd say to you as a summary statement is there's no one correct answer on this issue. There just isn't. And every community needs to address it on its own, given what that community thinks is best, and in this case, the school district needs to do so. Nobody, I'm not going to go back through all of the, you know, many, many hours of commentary from this chair over the years about how important safety is to me, not just physical safety, but emotional safety. And Marilyn talked about it recently in terms of our now 5-year-old comprehensive, one of the best I've ever seen, anti-bullying program. We talked about at this table also intensively about another issue that's emerging now at the national level on transgender students. We've taken a very powerful position on that. So I think that the position I have, just personally, is that I can say with absolute assurance, and I will say in writing after tonight, depending on how this conversation goes, to the community through various means of ensuring how strongly we feel about the safety of our students. And it's not just students of Hispanic descent, it's all students. Okay, all students. The anxiety that's being felt out there, of course, is being directed at a particular population because of comments that were made going back a year plus and some particular executive initiatives. But there are, you know, deeply held family friend relationships between families who are not Hispanic and those who are. Okay, so it's all students. So my view is that it's important for the leadership of the district, and I'm for now just absenting the board because they'll come in and say how they feel, but the leadership of the district, superintendent, principals, teachers, to make it clear that your students, your precious children, are safe when they're here, and we will do everything within the law to make sure that they are. You know, and you know, to get into all of the nuances and all the protocols of what that means, I know what it means, the principals know what it means, and I shared with the board. If in fact, and I have to say, I think it's an extremely unlikely situation that could ever occur, but if in fact we are visited by ICE officials, the principals know that their absolute first phone call comes to me, to let me know that it's occurring, to tell those people respectfully, please go to the superintendent's office. If they, for some reason, choose not to and want to stay, then I'll go over there and I'll have a conversation with them. And I will know precisely what to say because I will have all the information I need from all attorneys. So I guess I would end my comments by saying that I am confident that through various means of communication, including website, including commentary with teachers and principals at their schools, with families, at PTA meetings and other environments, that our students will know and our families will know, all families will know, how seriously we take our ultimately responsibility, which is to maintain the emotional and physical safety of our students. So my recommendation to the board, if there was one not to act on but to talk about, is to hold me responsible for ensuring that that environment occurs. And through me to the principals and the other staff to make sure that it occurs. And that's where I am at this juncture on the issue. I'm not saying it's wrong to adopt a resolution. I'm not a big fan of 6 or 7 whereases. I think you just get bogged down in, and nobody loves law, study of law more than I do, but when you start quoting law, Supreme Court cases and other cases and statutes, I think you tend to lose the focus of what you're really saying. And so what I'm really saying is what I said tonight. I think this is the important kernel issue that you need to require me to ensure occurs.
Well, and don't we have, I mean, this morning, you spoke of a couple of issues that show how we are a safe haven already.
Absolutely. So now that my voice is sort of going out, I will turn it over to Andy because he has done some excellent research, and Annika mentioned the birth certificate issue. We also have had an opportunity to talk with our local police, new police chief. I'll call him the chief. I think technically he's a captain, but I like to call him the chief. And Andy, why don't you pick up from there?
Sure. So a couple of weeks ago, and Shelley, I do have to give you credit. Thank you for bringing to our attention about the birth certificate issue. We did meet, Kathy and I met with each of our school office managers to understand what we currently were doing. And prior to that meeting, I spoke both to our attorney as well as to our auditors to understand what we legally are required to do when it comes to maintaining records related to various factors of demography. So one thing we found that we are now, to my knowledge, going to become the first district in implementing this change. But so it's such an ingrained part of school culture, but not actually a legal requirement, is that we are not required to hold on to birth certificates at any of our school sites. So all office managers have been instructed that this time they still need to review a birth certificate or some evidence of age for eligibility purposes in kindergarten or first grade. But their signing off on the enrollment document and putting it into the system, into our student database, is sufficient. We do not need to at that time take a copy and retain it.
I think that's really important to say. So you come in with the birth certificate and the office manager reads it and sees the date of birth and confirms that they have seen it, and then you take it away. We don't copy it, we don't mark down anything except we prove that we have seen it.
Absolutely correct. Right. So that's the first change. Related to that on birth certificates, it turns out Ed Code only requires us to verify age for enrollment purposes for enrollment into kindergarten or first grade. So in the case of a family that has a 4th, 5th, or grader or older, there's no need for us to actually verify even that birth certificate, much less hold on to it in the file. So again, office managers have been instructed that for now on, it's only kindergarten and first grade enrollees, and we will not be even asking to see it beyond that age. Again, a pretty big deviation from what's currently practiced in other districts, but I'm pretty confident that other districts will likely follow suit here pretty soon. Also, we are part of the county system for the student database. And within that, as we were putting information in, there was a number of fields that, again, were expected of all districts, but not actually legally mandated. And one of them did ask for residency or citizenship, citizenship. And it was unequally information being put in across sites. No one in our district was putting in if they suspected or otherwise had reason to believe that someone was not an American citizen. But if they saw the birth certificate was from the U.S., some sites would put in American citizenship. Others would just leave it blank. And if they saw it from another country, they frequently leave it blank. At this point, we've actually worked with the county to have a mass change so that none of that information is retained. It's all been deleted, and we will no longer be inputting that field into our student database. So at this time, the only question that remains, I do believe that we've taken, again, a number of pretty significant and necessary steps to help protect the safety and information about our students. One thing we haven't quite figured out yet, and we're still working with, and I'm going to be seeking the PTA, PTO feedback on, is what to do with current birth certificates that we have. We don't want to simply, of course, shred them or get rid of them, that sort of means, because we've heard from our office managers that on, if not a daily, certainly at least a weekly basis, some parents coming in using them a bit as a filing system to ask for a copy so they can use it for other activities that require it. So So we don't want to get rid of it because we know families do rely on it. We don't want to send it home in a child's backpack and risk having it misplaced. And so we want to provide for some means for parents who may wish to take it back to be able to take it back without having it be a challenging process on the office managers of having people frequently doing that during other important times of the day. So we'll work on how exactly do we get that communication out. But we are going to be working on eliminating the birth certificates from even current files. So that's related to the office manager meeting. Again, that's been communicated to all sites at this time. Hank mentioned also that I did meet with our new police chief and his assistant chief last week. Wonderful guy. I really am excited that he's joining the Valley, although he actually, his career started here in the Valley back in the 90s. So he does have a background working here in Ojai, worked here for 4 years or so, and then went to the farm, worked there for a couple of years before spending the majority of his career in East County.
Yeah, Sanford does it. Which farm?
What's
The
that?
Honor Farm.
The Honor
The Honor Farm. Nobody think about Sanford.
The area people at the farm.
So he definitely has some roots here, his career beginning here. Great guy. I did specifically talk to him, as did Dr. Bayless, about this topic. He made very clear the same statements that our County Sheriff Dean has stated, which is that the Ventura County Sheriff's Department does not believe that this is a issue with which they will be involved in at all. They believe that it's not their job or role to enforce federal immigration policy. So he stated that their stance will be that they actually view it as being in the exact opposite interest that they have as far as maintaining relationships in the community, and so they will not be in any way supporting or enforcing federal immigration law. There's a question as to if an individual is arrested and that they find out that the person may not have legal status, what they do in that situation. They inform me that they do not, they put into a database. ICE is informed they will not do the voluntary hold. They are legally allowed to, in support of ICE's initiative, to hold an individual for 48 hours. They said they're not doing that either. So they've informed ICE that if there was someone arrested in Ventura County who, again, may have illegal residency status, that they inform ICE that they can pick them up once the inmate's released from the actual county detention facility. So everything I heard from him was everything that we've heard from, again, Sheriff Dean in the paper and then publicly, and it is the Ventura County Sheriff's Department's taking a very strong stance that they will not be enforcing or even supporting federal immigration policy.
I'll tell the board who's chief deputy is.
Yeah, so again, I really enjoyed meeting both the new police chief and his assistant. Apparently, I found out some information about the protocol. When a new police chief comes in, he does have the ability to bring in his number two, and his number two happens to be Greg Bayless's brother-in-law. So there's a very nice connection there. And when we met, they obviously it was just a very nice tone in the meeting, and they made very clear their priority in supporting the district, and really began actually in earnest some exciting discussions around expanding potentially the role of the school resource officer program. So we're very fortunate to have small town connections.
And then also the steps we'll be taking at the COPA meeting, the next COPA meeting. Should we be mentioning that? Or?
Right, so Hank and I both will be attending next COPA meetings on the 21st. During that meeting, they're actually having two attorneys present. One is focuses on immigration. The other is an estate planning attorney with an immigration focus as well. And so both attorneys will be providing information. And it's really, the goal is to invite people even beyond current parents of our own students. But it's a community venue by which information can go out to anyone, either again of all ethnicities, of all residency statuses, for information as to what their rights are in those situations if ICE were to confront them, what they should be doing, what they, in the very, very unlikely and horrible situation of someone actually being deported, a parent being deported and separated from their child, what steps should that family do to reunite the child with the parent? They'll be having that meeting on the 21st. Hank and I are going to begin that meeting or be on the front end at least of that meeting discussing a lot of the same things we discuss here. So we're trying to help find avenues by which we can share this information of exactly the stance the district is taking.
Every time I sent this email earlier, but every time we have this discussion, I think, this can't be happening. It can't be happening. And last week in Los Angeles, so although yes, we live in California and feel a sense of protection, it's not necessarily there. A father dropped his 12-year-old daughter off at school, was driving to his 13-year-old daughter's school, in the process was arrested by ICE, was pulled over by ICE and taken into custody right then and there with the goal of having him deported by the end of the day. So although we think it's not going to happen, it is. And my concern is I'm thrilled that we're getting the information out. I would almost even suggest, because I think that the vulnerability is so strong, that people who are not concerned about their status be at the meeting as well in show of support, sent as proxies to give information back to families who are concerned about the vulnerability of showing up at a meeting where this discussion is happening. I think those things need to be communicated. But I'm also concerned about whether our counseling staff is prepared to handle this. If a child is left at school and mom and dad don't come to pick you up, it's shattering. So my question is, have we talked to the counseling staff? Are teachers paying attention to our kids so unable to focus right now because of these issues? Are they getting the help that they need?
That's really been the focus of those conversations I mentioned at our leadership team meetings. And I won't say that what you described is completely absent. That's not true. But I'm just so confident that we don't have elementary school counselors. Actually, we don't have junior high school counselors. Okay, so the counselors, as I said, become the principals and the teachers and the classified staff. And we know that we're so fortunate to be in a small community environment where there's an intimacy that exists here that does not exist in most places. So I'm going to say I would try to give people at least 30-second lead time before I ask them. So I'm going to ask Angie to respond a little bit. I would say that we are as well prepared to deal with an issue that emerges of the type you described as any place I could imagine. However, you can't be fully prepared for the kind of experience that could happen, right? So, what do you think? What's your read on the way in which teachers are interacting with students, particularly those of Hispanic descent, but not all? What do you see happening there?
Well, I think from what had happened a few weeks ago, the teachers were in with the travel ban. I think that the teachers were very supportive of the students, and were having discussions amongst themselves, at least at TOPA. And that's one of the things I just wrote down here is this is an OFT issue, and we need to have that conversation because whether we're, the union is the teachers, and the teachers are here to support our students and be here for the kids. And I think it is a conversation that we need to have because you don't know, like Shelley said, we don't know. We're all assuming that Ojai is this small place and that no one's ever going to show up, but we never know. A perfect example is I had a student in my class who cried every morning, and I said to her every day, "It's okay. Your mom's going to come back. She'll be back." But then she passed away in the middle of the night one night, and she didn't come back. And I realized, wow, like you can never assume anything. You can't say those kinds of things. And it was a powerful reminder for myself. And I think that for our children, like I was even thinking, wow, if that happened, they would be welcome and those children would be in my home immediately, because I want them to know I'm here for them. And I think every teacher would feel that way. How can I support these? If that were to happen, how can I be there? Because that's what I spend all day with these kids. We spend all day with our students and want to be there. So, but I do think the conversation, I mean, sure, I would say, yes, you know, here, let me take care of you. But do I really know what to say or how to deal with that? No. So I think if this is our future, then I think we may need to have some sort of staff development or something in which allows for us to know what kind of conversations we should be having, what are my rights? You know, I don't know what my rights are. Just calling you isn't, or saying to Cheryl, come here, right? I know what I would do, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to send me to jail too, right? You know, so I want to know what my rights are, and I think that that's valid for all the teachers in the district. We should all understand that, and then have at least some training of, if this were to happen, then what is the correct response? How can we help that child? Who is in line at the end of the day to take that child home? Because it's just like everything else that we do. You know, we do earthquake drills and lockdown drills, and if you're prepared, then you just created the best situation possible and the most supportive situation for that family and the children, and you're letting all the other parents know that in our community. But if we're not prepared and we're not doing anything and we're making the assumption that it's not going to happen in Ojai, then I still think that in and of itself doesn't support the families that are feeling vulnerable right now.
Okay.
If I can just real quickly follow up, Shelley, I absolutely agree with your comment about the meeting on the 21st, how important it is that anyone either personally interested or who, you know, again, has people they could communicate with after that meeting. We will be providing interpretation during that meeting. Primarily it'll be Spanish to English, but for English speakers or monolingual English speakers, you absolutely are encouraged to attend the meeting as well and can get the same information, and we won't have language access be an issue.
Marianne, we have skipped forward. We are doing the safe havens issue right now because we had some members who have to go home and do homework. So we jumped ahead, talking about what the district is doing beyond a board statement. And so, was there anything you would like to speak?
And Danny wants to say something.
Oh, yeah, I was going to say something too.
Okay, go ahead. You go.
I'm Marianne Ratcliffe, and I know all of you, and I know that you have all of the most wonderful intentions, and I appreciate that Dr. Bangser said that he, in the last meeting, that the information would be accurate and would be distributed to administrators and the board. So because I've read this very helpful document on this Ojai Unified website, I am more informed about some of the laws. That's why I just think a resolution would be helpful to have that distributed to the community. It's a very useful and basic tool to state some facts. And I did like the way Santa Paula Unified, how its resolution read, that it passed in January. It was very basic and simple, and it stated that it was a restatement of immigration status protection for all students. So it basically summarized the points that were made in this document that was on the school district website.
and has a very, I think, simple statement that everybody would agree with. I think you might have all seen the Santa Paula. So something along those lines I would really support because, like I said, I've informed myself and I know all of you, but I think as a statement to the board, it's just a very useful tool. Thank you.
Danny?
Yeah. Hello, I'm Danny Everett. I was going to speak after my daughter, but you guys started speaking after, and she said did such a great job. I didn't want to have to follow right after that. So the time passed a little bit. So I just wanted to say, as I was listening, I know that our school board, everyone is very thoughtful. I think we do a great job in our community to try to represent everyone. But I think as I was kind of listening to the discussion, and I think it was kind of already said, I think one of the worst things we can ever do is ever think that it can't happen here. Even though I love this community and I feel very safe in this community, I still tell my children, whenever we go somewhere, whenever you are somewhere, always be aware of your surroundings because bad things can happen anywhere. And I think when you are a minority and not just one particular minority, but just in the minority, and maybe you're not, and there's a hot topic that's affecting you directly. And I sit and think of history, and for someone to say, oh, there are laws in place, there are processes in place that are going to protect you. There was a time that someone like me or my children had a legal right to go to a school, but had to be marched in under armed guard, even though there were laws there saying that you had a right to be there. And I think having our leaders saying, I'm going to stand up and I'm going to speak out for you, I think it really does also start here at our school board level to really make sure that our community, the minorities in our community that this particularly affects, really know that you're voicing. And we don't want to be following. We want to be leading. I don't think we wait until something happens and then speak up. I think we need to speak up, make people feel secure, make people feel that the board is actually representing them, and know that there are concerns out there and we hear it and we want to publicly say something other than just talk policy. Because sometimes I think that does not do enough to make people feel like they're being considered. Thank you. That's what I wanted to say.
Tiara, did you want to speak?
Everything they said.
Check.
Can I say one other thing? I was thinking about a resolution or a statement, and I think that a statement would be great. But I think much more powerful. I mean, I think we should have a statement. But I think what's much more powerful to me is what Andy just talked about, is we're not requiring to hold birth certificates, letting people know that we're taking action. If that's part of the statement, here are the actions that we've taken to help you feel safe. We're doing this, we're doing this, we're doing this. Because that to me says something. I can read statements all over the place and it doesn't tell me anything. But saying, this is what we've done, that's powerful. And I think that would make somebody feel good. So.
No, there are a couple of things. One thing I haven't heard us say that I'd like to say is forgetting national politics and policies and state politics and policies. As a school district, and we represent the school district, we benefit from having more students. So I want all the students we can have come from wherever you want to come from. I love having students here. I think, that's fantastic. And I can't think of a safer place to be than in our schools. I think those are two important things to say. My concerns about a resolution have been and always have been. Let me give you an example. 2 cars are going 90 miles an hour down the freeway, and one has a "Catch Me If You Can" bumper sticker on it, and the other doesn't. Who is the highway patrolman going to pull over? And I don't think it benefits us to go out and say, like, my main concern about a lot of the resolutions that I've read is that they either state or imply that they're prepared to violate federal law. I don't think that's the right approach. I think the right approach is to follow the law and create as safe an environment as we can, but not to I don't see a point in being confrontational about it because I think it's a no-win situation. I think we benefit our students and our families more by creating a safe environment, by not broadcasting information, and by being supportive as a community and a school.
I agree that we as a board hold Hank accountable for setting the environment and stuff, but I do think a board resolution would be our public way of holding you accountable for that. And so I continue to think that a statement by the board is desirable. I agree with Thane on the one hand, as I said before, I don't want it to get overly political. We don't need to talk about what we're afraid of happening and all of the rest, because I think that's inflammatory. But by the same token, it can't happen here. It doesn't always fly. And so, when I'm thinking about this, I'm thinking, yes, I would like to make a statement that says we're holding you accountable for creating a safe environment, et cetera. But I think I would go beyond that, because I would want it to be sort of a practical statement, not just a, whistling in the wind kind of thing. And so, for instance, as we're talking about here, one of the things that I would see in some statement like that is that we expect that this district will prepare for an incident like that and establish the connections with Child Protective Services or whoever else is out there, so that you're not doing that in the heat of the moment, right? Same thing with publicizing the rights. I think that's something that we need to be doing on our website and make it very clear. And then the last thing goes along with like the birth certificate stuff. Where I perfect. I would also want to see something, because I would expect that we would seek out the changes that would be necessary to support this kind of an environment, right? So I'm very grateful to Shelley for bringing up the birth certificate issue. But I would, given my druthers, as part of holding the district accountable, it would be not just to be ready, but to seek out and make sure that we have locked ourselves down for the legal minimum, because that's our policy. And I don't think there's any harm in saying that we will comply with the law and no more. I don't think that's a challenge to anybody, because I don't think we're required to do beyond that. But I do think there's more to be said, right? That in addition to minimum legal compliance, we are seeking ways to make sure that within the law, we are protecting our community. So I think it's pretty important, and I don't think it handicaps the administration by us saying that do what you're doing because that's what we want you to do. And I do think it's important that the board, as the representatives of the community, take a posture as to how we are going to represent the community in this area.
Well, my feelings about this started with, I think, the obvious premise that all of us have, which is what is the very, very best thing I can do as a school board member to help the vulnerable people in our community who are subject to this new world order that's disturbing to so many of us. When we first got the information from Torlakson that he was suggesting that we consider these safe haven resolutions, the first thing I did was I reached out from a legal perspective, because precisely as Angie said, the last thing I would want to do as a school board or a school district is make promises to people that we can't keep. The last thing I'd want to do is to suggest, for example, to somebody that a school is a safe haven, like a church or like an embassy, so that someone might actually come to a school thinking that they're safe there and then find that they're not. That's the last thing I would want to do. So I reached out to the lawyers at the California School Boards Association, and I did have a good interaction, but it was sort of not definitive. I reached out to every single lawyer listed on the Department of Education website, those lawyers that are working for Tom Torlakson. Not one of them responded to me, not one of them. So I have no input whatsoever from Torlakson's people as to exactly what kinds of promises I can make as a school board that I can keep when it comes to what I can say to law enforcement, what I can say to a federal law enforcement person, etc. So there's that. What I've heard tonight, I'm super impressed. I think that the response of OHI already on the ground with real substance is really significant. I mean, here's a school district that goes out, gets this information about the birth certificates, which are a huge vulnerability to anybody in our school district, and they've got a policy in place, even considering the reality that some people use the district as filing for their school, their birth certificate. I mean, it's just a totally and very impressive response. And from my perspective, that's really where we should focus, is on what we can actually do. Whether it's a resolution or not, that kind of goes to Robert's Rules of Order. I mean, we certainly are, in some sense, issuing a resolution in that we're asking the superintendent and the rest of the administration to do things. But I really do have concerns that by making a public, a sort of flourishing sort of resolution that might sound really good and make me feel great as a school board member, like I'm really doing something, I might actually be doing something that's not helpful, which is to put us on the map for somebody somewhere in Washington goes, oh, what are those schools that have come forward and said they're going to defy us? So let's show them that they can't defy. And if you heard Stephen Miller ever talk, that's a guy who literally would seek you out to show you that you can't defy the feds. Is that, should I do that? Is that smart? I don't know, but my overall focus is on getting good information out, bilingual, in English and Spanish on our website, making it clear that we are, a school district with fabulous people, fabulous teachers, and what you said tonight on that subject makes me emotional. So that's where I'm coming from.
I think something that might be useful is a statement of policy, or you've already started it on the website by having the policy, but just to really define that. And like you say, tell our community what we know is a fact, what the laws are, and what we're doing.
I think too, for me, the resolution and the safe haven word, I thought the same thing. I thought of churches and embassies where the police cannot go in there. So if you have someone coming into our cafeteria thinking the police cannot go into the cafeteria to get them, that's something we can't do. We don't have that safe haven. But I think a statement, I mean, we have all these things, several of them are resolutions, but the other ones are just approve, so we could approve the things that we have, here's what we've decided to do to help our community and to make them, safe and well, we're going to have a training for our teachers, we're going to be doing this and this and this, and for us to approve that as our statement. Again, the resolution for those of us who are active, Mary Ann, it's very important. But for the people on the ground, I don't know if they're going to our website to see our statement. I don't even know if they get the Ojai Valley News and see.
Well, we can send something home with all the kids. I would think once this is all finalized in terms of what we're going to say, it should go home to every single kid in the district, right?
Well, I like the last minute or so of your commentary, and I could envision, certainly actually there's quite a bit of time between now and the April board meeting, that Andy and I and others, teachers, would organize that statement in such a form that you just described. That would be board action, right? Official board action that we could then quote as the formal position of the board because you took action. To me, that's why I like this conversation tonight, which is what I was trying to start last month, but you did, and now it's much richer, including commentary from speakers, that, to me, to just replicate a language that comes out of Sacramento, and it's done in 7 or 8 different environments, and they just sort of, cut and paste, and all of a sudden that's the board resolution. And maybe, no, I'm not saying, I'm sure administration in those places is working just as hard as we are. But when you have that statement as the board position, it's the same as X, Y, Z, and A, B, C. You can just take the name off the district and put another name on it, right? So I'm excited about, I don't get too much excited about board agenda items, but I'm excited. I'm excited to help create that. I won't do it myself, but I'll be responsible because I'm responsible for what I show to Jane as the board agenda at the April board meeting. You'll get it well in advance. Board members will get it well in advance. You'll edit and send it back. It's your statement. But I hear what you're saying tonight, and I think it's a natural evolution of what we've talked about the last 2 or 3 months. I do, and it's pretty consistent. I won't say the administrators weren't absolutely in lockstep on this. There were a couple who felt, yeah, we got to do a resolution. But as I really pushed and said, what really is important is that we make a statement to our students that they're safe here. Right? And it's not because the board adopted a resolution. It's because that's what the principals are doing.
Or at least they're as safe as they can be.
Well, yeah, that's right. But like I said, being safe in our schools completely, has been in place. Not even just because I'm here. I'll just speak for the last 8 years. That's been the single most significant focus of our student services program, particularly in the last 6 years. Way before this issue ever came on a national or state or local scene. So if that's okay with you, I'd like to bring something back which represents.
And if as a board, if you wanted to reread the Santa Paula or Wainini resolutions and see if there's anything that's important to you there, let Hank know.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can we hear from the input we've had? Or what do you think of this sort of direction we're on?
Well, the thing for me is, as we talk about a resolution, it sounded like we were talking about it as only a one-lane resolution, that it had to be something that was going to violate law. I would think that there would be some compromise there where it would be a resolution, but everyone is protected, meaning you're not putting someone at risk for setting them up to violate law, not putting ourselves at risk to be catch me if you can bumper sticker on the fast moving car. It's one of those things where I think it was said very well that it's great for the top to say, I'm going to support, and I think no one's doubting that, but I still think what the checks and balances of having the people that report to you that says this is what we need, by putting it in a resolution and say, this is, and make the resolution as palatable and as safe for everybody that we can, but I haven't heard anything that really is saying, the fact that I'm hearing a resistance to the resolution, if I were the person that resolution was supposed to give comfort to, it would make me uncomfortable that the board doesn't want to do it.
But doesn't like my resistance is because I don't think I'm helping, I'm hurting somebody.
Yeah, but you're safe. But the person that doesn't feel safe, they want you to come up with something public that is said that will make them feel safe. It's easy for us to say, I think something I'm going to do is going to hurt you, but you need to do something that's going to make me feel secure.
Because I think if I were just safe and didn't care about safety, I would just do whatever because I wouldn't be worried about it. I'm thinking about what is what are the consequences of sort of what amount to political statements on these subjects, and I think you actually can do, as I said, more harm to the people you're trying to protect than anything else. I mean, we certainly have to answer that question one way or the other. If anything we did was going to do more harm, that we're not going to do it. I will not do it. I don't care. I'm not going to do it. Right?
Absolutely. I mean, and that's what I'm saying. But I don't think it's a zero-sum game. I don't think that if you write a resolution, that definitely means you're going to do more harm.
No, but it's a possibility. It's legitimate in first question, right?
Yes. and now we come up with the wording that satisfies that makes it not do harm, and you feel comfortable that you feel that what you're saying is not going to do harm, but offers the person that feels insecure security, and then both people get what they want, as opposed to one person saying, I don't want to even entertain trying to come up with the language because I think even trying to figure that out is going to do harm or could possibly do harm. Write something down, figure something out, see if it works, and see if it meets your comfort level, because by doing it, it's going to make the person that we're trying to protect more secure, and then both people get what they want.
And actually, I think that's where we are.
I was about to say, Danny, part of this is terminology. Okay, so
Yes.
if you go back and look at our agenda where the 3 resolutions were approved,
Yes.
those are annual statements. You could take 2005 statement; it's the same as the 2017 statement. Whereas, therefore, to me that's so sterile. You know, it just doesn't get to the issue. And I'm not, again, don't misunderstand. If a district did that, which the wording is 90% of what came from Sacramento on December 23rd, fine. I'm not saying, I agree with you, it isn't, one, if you do one, therefore you don't do the other. Right? If you have some type of statement from the board, it doesn't mean that's all that's going to happen in the district. I'm sure those administrations are working very hard with their own populations. What I'm saying is I'm just not, after many years of reading resolutions, not moved that is a forward-thinking statement to achieve the kind of things that you're talking about. And I think we can bring back, I know we can bring back, about 5 weeks from now, a commentary about what we think speaks most eloquently to this community, and the board will, in my opinion, adopt it not as a bunch of whereases and a therefore, but a board statement. This is the board's statement about what we value on this issue.
Does the word resolution always require whereases and
No, it's just that's sort of what it is. I mean, you want to call a resolution, it's your board. You're the board. You can do it, call it whatever you want. I'm just saying, I just haven't really enjoyed reading the 7th resolution that looked the same as the first 6, which looked the same as the one that came from Sacramento. So I think we're very good here. Andy gave a good description of birth certificate, and Kevin, thank you for your compliments. We're very good here at tailoring things to our own needs. Okay? In fact, Tiarza, we never had that conversation. Tiarza wanted to know why I called off school on February 17th. You know what? We were the only one that called off school. Every other district had school, right? Because I was convinced, actually Angie was the one that convinced me, that we were going to have 50 to 80% more rain here, right, than in other places, and we're geographically challenged. And you know what? You were exactly right. We did. We got 7.5 inches. On the coast, it was more like 4, right? And there were some places you couldn't get to. Andy was great about driving around and sending me pictures. I live down the hill in that big community in Ventura. But
so he didn't set it up right. I told him I congratulated the superintendent's office for making a very wise decision, and I just want to hear all the drama all the behind the scenes.
All I can tell you is,
so what happened?
We had a meeting. We had a meeting. Angie was there, and Jane was there. We had a lot of people there, right, talk about it. And I think we made the right call. I got to tell you, it's nowhere near as dramatic as snow in Chicago. It was just, it's a minor league, but it was good to do. It was good to do. So anyway, I'm positive that the end of this 3-month conversation will result in a very significant, poignant, and powerful board statement at the April board meeting. That's what I think.
I just wanted to check at the later. Did you want to speak at all about the safe haven? Okay.
And check at it.
Can I make a suggestion using some of the words that are already used? What if the board made a proclamation that says something like, we're seeking out solutions and protecting our community? That's a general statement with the intent of what you're trying to do. And then the example you have already given here. So if you just make a proclamation that it's your intent to protect your education from your community.
I think that could be really powerful, and a statement really of the policies that we have in place to do it. When there were 2 things I didn't like about the resolutions that we've read. One is the kind of intent to break the law, number one. And number two, in the talk, Denny, it reminded me of police shows where somebody gets shot and they're laying there dying, and the person goes over to them and says, "You're going to be okay. You're going to be just fine." And I don't want to do that, but I do want to strongly state the policies that we have, and I think, like I said before, I think our schools are safe, and we do everything we can to keep the students safe.
But we won't be disingenuous, okay? Anything can happen anywhere.
Yeah, and I'm not seeking any kind of code words, right?
No, yeah, I know what you mean.
Safe place.
Yeah, no, I know.
Stuff.
Well, the whole thing was in code.
I don't like any of that. Sanctuary, that's political. And I don't want our statement to be political. It's practical in terms of what we're doing.
I can assure you it won't be.
Well, yeah, I agree with exactly what you're saying. I think there's a faulty premise that we're saying a dramatic statement that we're going to defy any laws. I don't see any of that in the resolution, even from Santa Paula. So I just think that's a faulty premise to begin with, and that's something that I would not advocate. I think it's just a simple statement. People might not even know what it says in the very first line of the item that's on the website, which I just think is so important that we maybe even shouldn't wait for weeks to go by before we have even this sent home, or the board supports this, which is that undocumented students between the ages of 6 and 18 not only have a right to attend schools in California, but are mandated to attend school. And then it cites the Supreme Court decision, and then it has the education code cited further. All students have a right to be in a public school learning environment free from discrimination, harassment, bullying, violence, and intimidation. So that's the law. And I think that you are saying that we support the law and that we will support the laws that are in place now that protect our students. And by the way, this was the vote that we took, and it was unanimous, or it was not unanimous, but it's an actual vote that is saying that when it comes down to enforcing the law that protects our students that we already have, that we're not defined by stating it, that we have an administration with a board that fully supports doing that.
And I think we're going to end up with something better than that, actually.
But a vote. I don't want to see a statement. I want to see every person on there what their position is, so that I know that when the ICE officer is sent to Dr. Bangster's office, that he knows that the school board is going to back him on what he's going to communicate to that officer.
Actually, I know that already, but I will tell you where we're going. Remember, you know this better than anybody. How many board meetings have you been to? We're at a board meeting. We're talking about the board statement, right? So what we'll be working on between now and the April meeting is the correct wording that all 5 board members can embrace as the board statement. But I send out stuff all the time. I mean, I inform the board about it. I completely agree with you. I don't have to wait five weeks to say that. But that's not sufficient. Those first couple of sentences aren't sufficient, because we learn things about birth certificates, and we learn things about safety of students who need counseling and all that kind of thing, right? So
a proclamation,
we
a
will take a vote.
resolution, a statement, whatever, I think that it's important simply as a communication tool, as a message to the community.
Agreed.
That's all.
I would like to move on. We have a busy schedule tonight. What I'm thinking of doing is just doing the update on the quarry, since we have someone here, and then taking a 5 or 10 minute break, and then hit the rest of the
So,
agenda.
Lori, can we start? Did you stay to the end?
I didn't. Marianne was.
Oh, Marianne, did you say
tag
it?
team.
All right, okay.
I couldn't hear the final audio of the meeting, but I did see that it was unanimous, yes. So they did have the compromise, which was from 7:10 to 7:35 is what they were talking about. So instead of having that entire hour, they determined that they were going to have that period of time that was the most congested commute time, where they would not have the trucks.
Okay, I gotta say that's a huge win. It's a huge win, because our position at the Planning Commission, I told you, was completely dismissed. I mean, it was unanimous against us. And so today, when we went down there, we knew that we had some support among the supervisors, but I thought it might just be a knockdown, drag out, 3-2, we win, you lose. And what we were asking for, was taking the hour that had been in place, right, from 8 to 9 and move it to 7 to 8 to be an earlier start time. Now that we did back with the original concept of the 8 to 9, and so apparently the vote was unanimous, right, Andy? Is that what you're?
It was unanimous.
Finally, yep.
What I really liked about the
Stop
vote
for a
was
second,
they're
I'm sorry.
going to.
I know you guys are waiting to say goodbye. Thank you
Bye.
very
Thank
much
you.
for
Every year they're going to check in to make sure that if the time of the school starting,
That's part of the night.
if the time of the school start were to ever change, every year they're going to check in with the district to make sure that if it were to change, that they would accommodate that change in the truck times.
Okay.
So what is the time period?
The last audio that I heard was 7:10 to 7:35 that they would not be going. Well, so if they release it, if they release the trucks at 7:35, they're not going to get to the school until after the kids have started.
After the final.
That's the point of that 7:35.
That's great. That's great. I hope. Did our people feel good?
You guys did a phenomenal job. I was so impressed, and you were really facing an uphill battle, and it's to your credit. Everyone was very impressed.
It was fun. I'm not sure if fun's the right term. It was interesting to be involved, and there were fun parts of it, like all the great conversations we had inside, waiting for them to get to our agenda item 2 hours later. But I'll tell you, the person unequivocally, the hero on this one is Michael Shapiro. I mean, we were nowhere. We all participated, but he was the driving force. He's the one who got the lawyer, right, to write a very concise, I thought very convincing, historically based position. And, the only thing, what I added was, this whole idea that when you create a concept legislatively at a particular point in time, and you go back and read, what was the legislative intent? The intent was to not have those trucks drive by the high school in that period of time when people were turning in there. Well, that was before we now are earlier, right? So the 7 to 8 is the equivalent of the former 8 to 9, and so we got half of it. I think that's pretty darn good.
I think so too.
I hope Michael was happy. Was Michael happy?
He was happy. Yeah.
I received a few updates from Greg throughout the process. I'll read a couple of them.
Do some high fives or what?
Yeah. So first of all, thank you to Supervisor Steve Bennett. He was the one that proposed the compromise language. He proposed it that it'd be during the peak 25 minutes or so, not the whole hour. The planning department took a brief break to discuss it. When they came back in, Greg said it seemed that there was a lot of support around this compromise, around Steve's proposal. Everybody was very happy. It was a great witness of a sighting of an endangered political species, the compromise.
Leave it to Greg to make a social studies statement. Good. Well, that's my report.
Quarry guy, good for him. He could have dug in and said no, and he gets to be recognized as being able to be a business leader.
Who are we talking about?
Mosler.
Oh, Mosler.
Yeah.
Did he actually participate in the?
Yeah. So their counselor was part of the.
Oh, right. His lawyer was there. So,
yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah. Great. Great. Good for us.
Yes, a break until 10 up. 8 minutes, because we always take.
And there are refreshments, Kathy, refreshments in the conference room for everybody?
All right, I wasn't expecting that. Okay, we are going to the exciting part of the evening, Andy. 7.4.1, approved certification based on the second period interim financial report.
Sure. So before I get into the actual content of the budget, I want to, for both our new board member as well as those in the public, and potentially those watching at home, just walk through what it is actually that you receive at each of these interim revisions. Before I even do that, though, I do want to acknowledge how wonderful a job Patty did. This is her first interim revision that she took the lead on. So Laura was very involved in the first interim, and so Patty put in. This is really, the most time-consuming, one of the, largest responsibilities the director has. It ends up being over a month's worth of work that goes into each of these revisions. And so I do want to thank Patty for the many nights and weekends of extra work that she put in to get this done. I think it's a very, very good finished product. So thank you. So going through the actual materials you have. So you do receive what works out to typically be around 130 pages of this very large document. What this has is actually about 10 separate sections, a different set of materials for each of our funds. We have a number of different funds. The general fund, though, is obviously far and away our largest. Now Measure J would be our second largest separate fund. And then really Cafeteria Fund, our school nutrition services program, is going to be our next largest. This document is, I understand, extremely challenging and unwieldy and just is not the most user-friendly thing. And so what we try to do is what's actually in your agenda materials is put together a few pages, this time it happened to be 15, that really tries to provide all the same information that you're receiving in here on the general fund, but in a much more usable format. Still a work in progress. No question it can be done better. But just want to make sure that you, and for those at home, that you understand what these 15 pages are. We start off on page 3 with just the summary that Patty drafted of the changes between first interim and second interim. Remember, we adopt our budget in June. We have our first interim revision come to you in December. The second interim must come to you by March 15th. This year will be our second consecutive year of doing a third interim, which will come to you in May or potentially early June. But these are the official revisions to the overall budget. So that's the next 2 pages. And then you have 3 separate viewpoints for the general fund over the coming pages. So the first one is the actual budget. That's on pages 5, 6, and 7. Following that, you have the multi-year projection. So this looks at all the same information that was on those prior 3 pages. There's nothing new related to the current year budget in the multi-year projection, but now you have a glimpse of seeing what the next 2 years would look like if we maintained roughly the same programs and based on the current projection on revenue. So that first page on page 8 is actually states some of the assumptions we use to arrive at the multi-year projection. And then from pages 9, 10, and 11, you're actually looking at 3 separate years of information. So even though it looks similar to the prior pages, the 3 sets of columns in the prior pages in the current year budget is comparing first interim to second interim, and the last set of numbers are the difference, the variance between those 2 budgets. Once we get to multi-year, there's still just 3 sets of numbers, but now the difference is that they're actually for 3 separate years. And then starting on page 12, this is the first time that you've seen this type of report. This was in response to our budget session, study session from last week, where I provide similar information, and it was well received, I felt, by you guys as far as a different viewpoint of the what we were looking at that time was non-personnel cost, and it actually took me quite a bit of time to put together, so it looked slightly different, but not much from this. And then after I did it, and after you guys said that you would be interested in seeing this in the budget materials, I worked with the county and actually creating a special query so that way it was much easier to populate now. But what these materials are showing is you're able to see all of the budgets that you've seen for this year. So budget adoption, first interim and now second interim, as well as you're able to see where we are at with actuals year to date, and then the remaining balance, just the difference of second interim to actuals. Also, now this is a separate look at the budget than those prior 2 sets of documents that we talked about in the earlier pages. This actually drills down and gives you greater level of detail. So you may realize this is the first chance that you have of seeing something like on page 12, the second item down is teacher substitutes. So this is the first time that you actually, even in this entire document, you never were able to see substitutes, the amount that we were spending. So now, instead of simply seeing a single line item for teacher salaries, you actually see it broken out between sub, stipend, and salaries, and then the same thing going down. And so likewise, when we were looking at non-personnel costs, you previously only saw a single line item that grouped all of our housekeeping and operations, which if you recall includes our utilities. Now you're actually able to see the utilities broken out separate by each utility and that sort of thing. So this is giving you a, while I know aesthetically it's not the most pleasing to look at in this, canned report from Escape, it does give you, I think, a lot more information. So hopefully that was, helps in your analysis to ultimately improve this budget. So with that information, I'm going to jump back now a few pages, and I'll tell you what I believe to be the most important, which is on page 7. This is looking at, again, the current year budget, our second interim revision. I'm going to just jump right to the bottom line, or the most important, I should say, line, not bottom as far as placement on the page. But if you go about 6 lines down on this page, you'll see beginning balance. This is our beginning balance at the start of the year, what we had in our general fund. You can see that that's just focused on the unrestricted columns. Obviously, there's no difference between our first interim revision and our second interim because we knew what we were starting the year with at that point. So it was $2.1 million. If you look to the line immediately above it, you'll see with the net increase to the ending fund balance as a result of this budget. So what this shows is that we still are looking at adding to our savings, adding to our ending fund balance. From where we started the year, we're going to have more revenues this year than expenditures. But what you'll see is that we are spending more money now based on the second interim revision than was planned at first interim. And so our increase to our ending fund balance is smaller. It's the difference of the 121 that you'll see in that middle column compared to 292,786 in the revision 1 unrestricted column. And you can see going all the way over to the right side of the page, the difference of the numbers is that we are looking at spending $171,000 more now at second interim than we're at first interim. So
remind me, Andy, as I asked you about this today, so the 171 reflects the increase in spending and the increase in income?
Correct.
I mean, it's not
precisely. So the 171 is the net. We have some new revenue coming in. We have some new expenditures that are matching that revenue, which is why this entire amount is almost exclusively the increase from the settlement with OFT. So if you recall, OFT, we had 1% in the budget at the start of the year. We approved on January 10th a 4% non-retroactive increase for this school year. The cost of that effectively is only a 2.4% increase from what they were making for this current year. We had 1% already in the budget. So the increase as a result of the OFT settlement was a 1.4% increase for OFT salaries. Roughly 1% is $100,000, and so of that $170,000, $140,000 is actual teacher salary increase as a result of the settlement.
That's the half year.
Correct, exactly. That's the impact for this year. So if you want to see where that actually is shown, you could go back to page 6 of 15, prior page. If you look at teacher salaries, you'll see across unrestricted and restricted that we increased the salaries by approximately $117,000. That's the salary impact, but there's not, when we talk about a salary increase, there's not just the actual salary impact, there's also the impact to STRS and to Medicare and to, teachers actually, I apologize, they're not paying into Medicare. Where are they actually? They're paying into Medicare, they're not paying Social Security. Thanks. Small percent, okay. Majority of our staff don't, but there are some that can. And in the other statutory, so work comp, they're still paying into and that sort of thing. So in total, that's what gets you that $140,000 difference. The other only real difference that doesn't have an offset from the revenue was that we did have 2 additional classified employees who are qualifying for benefits who are not previously in the budget. One was a bus driver who, because of the needs of their route, which is tied to special education students, exceeded the 6.5-hour contract time, and so they became eligible for benefits. The other is just a oddity that a prior incumbent in the position was able to actually opt out of our benefits and was receiving their, they had a military retirement and were able to receive benefits through that military retirement, and so we did not have budgeted for that position benefits. When that person left and the new person was hired, we now are providing that person benefits. And so no change in FTE to the classification of the position, just a change in person, and that person impacted the benefits. So that really is the only changes to the budget that weren't offset by an increase in revenue.
When you're talking about that question on retired benefits, I'm just kind of looking at the
Sure.
age, what is this, 10?
Sure.
Over 3 years, right?
Uh-huh.
Over the 3 years, it's like almost $100,000 jump.
Mhm.
Are we on pay-as-you-go, or are we on
Pay as you go,
We're on
correct.
pay-as-you-go.
Correct. So the increase is simply the same increase that we're budgeting for current employees at 4% increase to benefits each year, or increase to medical premium cost each year. 4%.
Do we know what our actuarial liability is on retirement?
We're required to have it done every 2 years. We had it done about a year and a half ago, and I recall it being around.
2015, we're due again for
That sounds right. So I believe that the number that we had back then was about 18 million. Well, it has been a little while. I've seen a few numbers since, but I think it's 18 million approximately. Currently, we have 50 employees, approximately 50 employees who are currently receiving retiree benefits. Average cost is just a hair under 15,000. That's what gets you to the number that's just around 600, 700,000 a year.
It's exclusively the post-employment medical, right?
Correct. Right. So if you just make sure we're all looking at the same page, if you're looking at page 10 of 15, over the course of 3 years, the retiree benefits 600,000, 632, and 670, approximately $1.8 million the budget across 3 years going to post-retiree benefits. So
and that means they retire before they are getting their STRS, and we're paying them until they get their. Medical.
Right.
Okay.
Right. So for post-retiree benefits, you qualify if you've been with the district for at least 10 years. You are currently eligible for benefits at the time of your retirement, and that you retire sometime between age 55 and 65. And you'll receive those benefits until you hit age 65.
So is there a thought in the future that for future hires, we might have to change that age?
That is a negotiated item. It's in both of the collective bargaining agreements, and so it's certainly subject to negotiation.
The tension, of course, is that it does amount to an incentive for someone to retire. And I don't want to use the word I use that Michael Swank was bothered by, but usually the new teachers would come in at a lower salary, so you could actually be doing.
And if you're talking way down in the future, I'm saying if you maintain the contract that you have with the person who's now 50, it doesn't change for them. But when you're hiring someone who's 25, you're saying when they get up to that age, they're going to have to wait till 60.
Right. But what I'm saying is, if you did impose that new rule, you could end up actually hurting yourself, because now that person stays on salary to an older, a longer period of time at a higher salary. But
you could hurt us in 30 or 40 years.
You could hurt the next board.
But it never comes to roost until 30 or 40 years, right? I mean, it's not an issue until then. That's why the actuarial versus the reality, or the yearly is. But eventually, if we have a whole lot of retirees at the same time, it could really.
And the actuarial on that is pretty solid, because not that many people die between 55 and 65.
Right. Yeah. Their entire analysis really comes down to projecting number of current eligible employees who would be retiring when that may come. But yeah, absolutely correct. The survival rate is
really high.
Absolutely.
Although it's also based on estimates of what medical care will cost in a while, right? I think when I was running in 2012 and I looked at that grand jury analysis, at the time it was 10 or 12 million. That was not that long ago.
So are there any questions on the current year budget revision? If not, then I'm going to have a few comments about multi-year, but I do want to make sure if there are any questions on the current year budget, the second interim revision.
Chuck, did you have a question?
I wanted to make a statement. CalPERS has changed its retirement age based on your higher year. So it's gone up to 62 after the year of 2012. So if somebody comes on this over, so that's already calculated just on what PERS is doing.
Yeah, that's right.
That would have an effect with us as well.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So I do want to turn your attention to the multi-year projection. I hate to be a broken record and a negative one at that, but I do just want to continue to draw the public's and board's attention to page, starting on page 8. So what we tend to focus on when we're looking at multi-year projection is that midpoint of the page, the shaded line that says unappropriated fund balance. You'll see that we're looking at, based on this second interim revision, ending this year with $1.4 million as the unappropriated ending fund balance. You'll see that in 17-18 that we're projecting ending that fund balance at $234,000. And in 18-19, ending it with 0. And the way that we get to 0 is if you look 2 lines above it, that we have a $1 million reduction in staffing required to make that 0 out. So I think that, again, the broken record side of this is I want to make sure that we're emphasizing not just what 2 years out is looking like, but really what we're looking at for next year. And the reason that we're going from a $1.4 million ending fund balance to a $230,000 ending fund balance. That means that next year we're projecting a deficit of $1.2 million. So it's not just 2 years out, but it's both next year as well as the year following that we're projecting deficits. But next year, because of the fiscal responsibility of this board and holding on to the increased revenue we received the past few years, we are able to better shelter ourselves against the potential deficit for next year. I will also always repeat that a second interim in March. This is we are certain not how things will actually end up for next year. The May revise and the June actual budgeted agreement hasn't come out from the state, and so we know that will change things. We also know that we never fully expend funds from a current year, and so we will have some dollars that are rolling forward into next year. But I do just want to make sure again that we understand. I've heard at various times in public meetings, not here in board meetings, but elsewhere about debt versus deficit. And I think it's just again a really key thing to remember that we are not looking at a debt until 18-19 that would be negated by the staffing reductions, but really the deficit does begin next year.
Not to pile on the negative, but halfway down the list of items to find the Rose salary enhancement, right? That $234,000 and the 0 with personnel reductions is with 2 zeros.
Correct.
On salary enhancement, which
correct.
I'll just leave it at that.
Right.
Yeah. So that's all we can put there now, but that is not what we would what anybody would want.
And the health and welfare increase at 4%
Which could be
7%.
Could be. So, sorry. Go ahead.
One number here that I we probably covered this, but I'm not remembering the LCFF target. That big negative number in 17-18, 432,076. What is that?
So the potentially could be better defined using different terms, but so each year we're still in LCFF implementation, which means each year the governor and what our budget actually is telling us, it's coming from Sacramento, is the extent of the gap that they're funding in a single year. So meaning, we're at point A, we're supposed to get to point B at full implementation. How much of that gap are they going to be funding each year? And so you can see that they're funding, they're proposing a fund 40+% each of these years, but that's not actually very many dollars because the gap from A to B right now, A is that we're at about 96% of full implementation. We only have to get up to 100, in a couple of years. And so when you're funding 40% of a gap, the gap's only 4%. That means the funding increase is only, 1.6% or so. But it's negated because of the reduction in students. And so even though we are seeing that we'll be receiving a little bit more money per student, that we're going to be actually $430,000 fewer LCFF dollars next year based on declining enrollment.
So then why next year
Yeah.
after that does it go to 690?
690, yeah.
Because at that point we have bridged the actual, we no longer are feeling the pain of the declining enrollment, and so when they're talking about a 50% increase in gap funding, that does actually have a real impact to us. Remember, we're a declining enrollment district, which means we're funded off of the prior year's ADA. So next year's funding that results in that loss of $400,000 is actually really the impact of this year's ADA, 16-17, relative to last year's ADA. Remember, we lost nearly 100 students this year. We're at a over 90 student drop we had this year relative to last year. And when you are talking about all in receiving, depending on exactly how you quantify that ADA number, about $9,000 or so per student, that ends up being almost $1 million that we'd be losing just because of loss of students. But that's not, we're only seeing part of that actual loss because of an increase in per student revenue. Does that make sense?
If we did have more students next year, we could elect to use that number.
If we had more students next year relative to this year, then absolutely we'd be using that number. So they always will choose whichever is the higher of your current year or prior year ADA. They're trying to help districts that are in a declining enrollment state to help smooth out that transition.
And what year does the full gap, are we fully funded?
Fully funded, the goal was to be 2021. There's now some question as to whether or not we'll actually get there. The governor actually already in the January revise, or in the January proposal already was proposing what's the actual term? Not deficit spend, but it was creating a deferral. Thank you. Creating a Prop 98 deferral, and so we just finally got fully caught up on funding this year, and already for next year he's talking about a deferral, meaning that we will be receiving less than we actually should be potentially entitled to, as all education, not just Ohio Unified by any means, but education funding in the state. So again, good news is we have a healthy ending fund balance this year. And based on second interim, we're still increasing that fund balance at the end of this year, but we absolutely have challenges ahead of us.
And is there anything new from Sacramento other than what you just mentioned in terms of more money, less money?
Nothing has come out since January. We don't hear, it goes dark between January and May, and we just actually, all three of us, Angie, Patty and I will be going to the May Revise workshop that School Services puts on down in at VCOE, and that'll be the next time we really get a glimpse. I try to stay abreast of the political talk, but a lot of it's behind closed doors.
Get a drone, see what we can find out.
Call Russia.
Yeah.
Oh, we're not going to call it. Sorry.
Russia, if you're watching this, you can definitely use some info on the budget.
CIA.
I don't know him.
What about that target you were saying?
Are there any questions on the multi-year projection? I will only, just to reiterate what we're already talking about, just point you to page 11 of 15, where you can see, remember how we focused a little bit just recently on talking about that column that says net increase or decrease, and how for this year we're still looking at $120,000 increase to our budget. You'll see that next year, as we've already talked about, that $1.2 million deficit begins. And the reason that the following year is only at $250,000 is because it assumes that there would be reductions in either personnel or other expenditures in the amount of $1 million to get us to only having a $40 million deficit.
I would just like to say thank you. I always go in going, I'm not approving this. This is wrong. This is awful. And then he goes through it with me, and I go, oh, okay. I get it now.
He's taken on Hank's ability to do these aren't the droids you're looking for.
Exactly. What?
Okay, I guess I was wrong.
This is great, especially the detail.
Okay, so is there a motion to approve the second interim?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
None opposed.
Thank you. Staying sane.
Thank you. Okay, 7.4.2, college readiness block grants.
Yours.
Yeah, so you'll recall we had the public hearing at our last meeting. Greg spoke about the 5 priority areas for expenditures. This is a plan that's required to go to the state prior to us being able to expend these funds. It's $75,000 that can be expended over this current year and then in the next 2 years, so a 3-year span for expenditure. This was our best plan that we could put forward after feedback from staff and students and parents at Nordhoff. But we also retain always the ability to modify a plan and come back to the board. Any plan must be approved by you prior to expenditure. But if we did find other need, once we, for instance, see what it's like to have expanded library hours per year and realize whether it's successful, we want to expand it even further, or if we were going to reduce it or reduce the way in which it's staffed, that could still come back to you. But this is ultimately the product of both the public hearing last month and multiple conversations among staff and stakeholders at Nordhoff.
Any questions?
No, I particularly like the initiative for the support of this library.
And I've heard it's popular, but it's.
Yeah, certainly had success as well.
Yeah, we've pretty much covered this in the previous meeting, so if I can have a motion to approve the expenditure plan.
I'll move to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. None opposed. 7.5.1, Andy, we're going to keep you busy. Measure Day update.
Well, I don't want to read what has already been put before you, so I'll just say that, reiterate what we said last month. Very excited with the team that's being assembled here at the district office, led by Ron Tyndall. You can see a number of projects that we've all discussed and identified over the past year plus, both dating back to Josh's assessment and Balfour Beatty's needs assessment. But we are definitely making progress for the summer, and we will be seeing far more significant construction occur this summer than the painting from last.
What?
Yeah.
7.5.2, review of the 2 budget study sessions and construction of the 17-18 district budget.
Before we is Balfour Beatty kind of on a glide path of less work?
So at this time I do require they send me a weekly update on exactly what they're invoicing me. I did send to each of you last night what the most recent invoice we paid from them on was. But this time we do receive the weekly update, so I'm not surprised when I see a month end and try to recollect what exactly I did when. And so the last 3 weeks, it's I think 3 or 4 hours one week, 2 hours one week, and this past week was 1. So
beautiful.
We're not severing ties with them this time in case, depending on the type of project that we look forward to for summer 18. But at this time, the goal is that they are used very, very sparingly.
Awesome.
So I think the purpose of putting this review in, obviously we were all here, we don't need to review it for ourselves, and if you didn't come, you can watch it on our website. I think the point of the review is just to sort of say, what's our next step? Well, so what do we do with all that information that we had or have? I don't know, did you want to talk about this, or do you want me to? Okay.
Whatever you'd like.
So, the conversation Andy and I had the feeling that definitely another meeting so that we can sort of say, okay, here's what we talked about. We did sort of mention some priorities that we felt as a board, obviously like music being something we're interested in, technology, we've talked about all these sort of things. So that sort of will give us the chance to say, here's the ones that we want to figure out a way to put in, or now that we also have the second interim budget and we can look at constructing for the future, what do we think? I think what we did was study the past and the present, and the last meeting will be, how do we implement that to the future? Or any changes that we discovered looking at the granular level.
I like it.
And we talked about late April, early May.
Exactly, right.
Does that sound? Do we want to look at a calendar right now, or do we want to maybe present that at the next meeting?
No, sure.
Okay, so we have a meeting April 18th, so it would be the 25th. The next, we have one on the 2nd, so we're actually talking more like May 16th, I think, or May 9th. We have, our April one is late because of spring break, and our May one is early because of.
Has to be before the 15th.
It has to be before the 15th.
Andy,
So Lori brought up a
a
great point of, do we want to schedule this around May revise? And I think that for this upcoming meeting, that's actually not necessary. I think that it'd be better for us to be really focusing on that, ideally early May timeframe, potentially late April. But that would allow us to have those discussions around, really understanding. We talked tonight about expanding the FTE that we have of music at the elementary level. Having those sorts of discussions, comparing it with other, very important needs that I know are shared by many, or priority shared by many. We can have that conversation prior to the actual release of May revise. That May revise will certainly help us and be informed as to the extent to which things have changed from January. But in order to be able to really begin building that budget that Patty's going to begin here in the next few weeks, I think that the right time to have the next conversation, it may not be the last conversation, but the next one would be early May.
So we have a meeting April 18th, and 2 weeks later, May 2nd. So we could have 3 weeks in a row, or we could have the 18th, a week off, and then 2 weeks in a row, the 2nd and the 9th.
Is May 9th okay? May 9th
Michael
work?
can't do the 9th.
Oh, you can't do the 9th?
Do we have to do it on a Tuesday?
May 16th would allow. I mean, it would be after May revise, so we could have even more information at that meeting. Again, I don't think it's necessary after May revise, but I'm sure that it'd be beneficial for all to hear what exactly comes out at that time.
That's getting, but on the expenditure side, that's getting pretty close to the construction of the early June presentation to the board of a budget, which
may be discouraging. So maybe the 2 weeks in a row. Would be
Yeah,
better.
that's a good point. I think that going back to those first 2 weeks in May, or even that last week in May, probably first 2 weeks in May.
Well, we can't do
Well, that's what I'm saying. Outside Tuesday, though, I think was brought up as a possibility.
Yeah.
So we could do either the 25th of April or the 10th of May. We could do a Wednesday night.
Can I point out that there are open houses at different one of the schools? Should you check that? I mean, a lot of you guys go to open
Let's
houses.
see, I might be able to pull those up on this small screen.
I would kind of lean to having the 3 weeks in a row rather than 2 in 1 June.
Oh, it would be a week later. It would be.
The last Tuesday in April?
So if we could do the 18th, we could do the 25th, and then the 2nd, or we could do the 18th, 2nd, and then the 10th. So it would be a week later. It would be the 2nd.
I think May 10th is getting sort of late. I mean, if we're gonna, I'd rather have you do it in late April than last Tuesday of April.
April 25th?
April 25th, let's see.
How's that look for open house?
If there's not a school function.
Anything, Sean, Kathy?
There is one thing in the evening. That's a OEF, a reception event.
That's
On the
early.
25th?
That'd be early.
Yeah, that's from 5:30 to
5:30,
7.
yeah, that's early.
Wait, on April 25th?
On April 25th, 5:30 to
That's for the
recipients
that's
of
for
the
recipients. Well, you might want to do that.
Could we set our meeting later,
Sure,
like at
oh,
6:30 to
absolutely.
8:30
Sure.
instead of 5:30 then?
Those events, at least last year, was at
Wine.
Oh, hi, yeah. I've been here. I may not be in my best. I'll resist.
Control yourself one night.
All right,
Wednesday
tentatively,
instead?
April
There you
25th
go.
from 6:30 to
There you
8:30.
go. Yeah, you make it a good appearance. Make a good appearance.
Seven 7.5.3 citizens oversight. We're discussing extending the current years that this current committee is serving. Their time is up now, or
Technically,
April
it would be this
right
year.
now. So we're asking to extend it for all those current members until June, and then start the new group, which will be some of the current group and some new people. So that every year they're finishing their tie-up of, but looking at the budget and what we've spent, and their report to us at the end of the year. So it will be sort of tied in with the year end instead of, yeah.
How much discretion do we have to waive whatever requirements there are in terms of the end of their term?
Well, it wouldn't be waiving, it would be formally extending. And so this would become technically either you could view it as a second term, but it's only a 3-month term, or the formal extension. But I've run it by ALR, and they didn't think there's anything with issue with it. In hindsight, just a reminder, we've had a bond measure back 20 years ago. At that time, COCs were not required. And so this is actually our first COC, and I think that in hindsight, we likely would not have selected March to be the time that the term began, because their annual report cannot begin until after the audit report comes out in January. And so it's not unique to OHI. All COCs typically submit their annual report to the board in May or June. And so it's far more common that you actually have terms end with the end of the fiscal year into the school year. And so that would really, what our recommendation is that you do extend for this period. And then we have the terms beginning now on July 1.
Do we have any sense of who might bow out? Yeah.
We have received notice from a few of the members. Can't remember the whole list off the top of my head. I can shoot you an email.
But we did receive some new applicants.
We also received a couple really exciting new applicants representing some new stakeholder groups within the community. So really, really nice.
I love that you get excited.
I do get excited. Eagerly look at the mail each day, see which applications come in.
Just gonna have to send an application just
So are we asked to have a vote on this? Yeah, we have to vote on the
Yeah, we are
extension,
asking the board, because the board does have to actually take action on this to extend it.
I'll move to approve the term extension.
to June 30th. Second.
Yeah, let's call it a interim extension or something, because hopefully it doesn't have to count as a whole. It doesn't count against somebody.
Correct.
So their tenure.
Certainly.
So that they can serve the full 2 terms, right?
Mm-hmm.
What's the max? 2?
So 2 is what's currently in their charter. There's actually, 2 consecutive is what's in the charter, and that's what law was back 2 years ago. There's actually a few things that are currently going through the courts that Oak Park is now interpreting as allowing 3 terms. I'm not even sure what would be going through the courts right now that would be on that topic, and so I need to just research it a bit more.
Or who would pay for it?
Right. Well, that's what's confusing to me. If we can just extend the term 3 months, why can't we extend the term 3 years?
You're pushing it too far.
So there's a moment in Spinal Tap where they say, let's leave that unsolved.
I can check with our attorneys and see their
Well, for now, let's
vote
go.
on that.
So if it's legal, I move to extend the term to June 30th.
Do I have a second?
I will second it if it's legal.
All those in favor? Aye. None opposed. Okay, we've done the next 2 items, the safe haven and the quarry update. So now we are at 7.5.6, update on classroom projects in recognition of African American History Month. So we had all those lovely writings and computer generated.
Hope you enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Teresa, thank you as always for staying all the way through the meeting. You never know when we'll need you, like we did a month ago. when you helped, and San Antonio in particular is extremely well represented here, with a lot of detail from Icy and Dan, Annie and Jackie and Kathy. Very well done, as every school is represented. So thank you all for the contributions, and particular thanks to Michael Swank for his continued leadership in developing all kinds of presentations. Matilaha was really well done. And we had some nice younger child writing too, didn't we? So, yep. Okay, so that's that.
CSBA Delegate Assembly Representative Election.
So I'll see if I can help you on this one a little bit. We have 2 votes, right?
Yes.
Two to 5. And this is not in any way at all casting any negative light or aspersions on the top 3, but we know John Walker very well, of course. He's a now 24-year or so veteran of the Ventura School Board. Nobody is more committed to CSBA work than he is. And the other person I would recommend that you support is Christina Urias. She's been very, very involved with the county board's work. Might be the president now. I know she's in a leadership role and has been in various leadership roles from Santa Paula High School District. Now Santa Paula Unified. Everything's unified there now. So that's sort of a weird. That's a carryover. They don't exactly have a high school district anymore, but that's a carryover from the old terminology. So I know a little bit about one of the other 3. I just feel the 2 of them would represent our area best.
The other one that I, just from reading their applications and bios, was Dennis O'Leary. You know, he's been on the Oxnard School Board for 13 years, and some of his comments timely. So, but I would definitely myself one of those for John, and then the other 2 that I marked were Dennis and Christina.
I had noticed his remarks also and felt positively toward them.
It's a little skimpy though.
Yeah.
There wasn't a lot there.
I'm definitely in favor of John, and I would defer to Hank on the other. They were all, I thought Urias on the biggest issue facing boards, I thought was a little generic. She basically just spoke of governance issues as opposed to anything particular right now out there in the world. But,
yeah, that's why I was like, oh, that's good.
I like John and I like William Daniels because he was talking about lobbying for money. And that's all we really need him to do, right? And no one else, it was only John and William that did that. But I don't really care. I don't know anything except for John, so I'm for John.
And you don't have to vote for 2. I mean, if you just like John, then you just vote for John.
I can go for John, and I'll take the recommendation. I kind of gravitated towards Stewart because I thought that the discussion of really working for CTE versus transfer balancing is very timely. And it's a lot of our money from the state, at least at the community college level, now is being earmarked for CTE and employment readiness type stuff. So the environment is moving into that very practical thing. So I think it was a timely thing, but I don't know anything about it.
I marked her too.
I would.
Not that it's I guess, yeah, it's certainly an issue.
I would support voting for her. So
I don't, it's hard to do it on the basis of a superficial. I definitely think we're all agreeing on John.
I'll take a recommendation. I mean, they all seem.
Well, I can tell you, again, I haven't gone to every quarterly meeting for 8 years, but I've probably been to 80-90% of them, and Tina is a presence, and a positive presence. I mean, she represents particularly well, I think, represents the Hispanic School Board members, and just vivacious and outspoken, I think, in all the right ways. So I've been impressed with that.
I can support that too.
I'll support that.
Okay, so, do we take, the board, let's see, cast a ballot for the two vacancies. Board
I'll
casts its
move that we
ballot.
support Uris and Walker. All second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. None opposed. First reading of the board policies. So exciting.
Andy, if you're gonna create excitement, now's the time.
So I think what I'll do is, like Thane and Linda did before me, I'll just say if you have a comment on pages 1 through 15.
I'll just tell you, this is a first for me.
No.
But I don't really have any comments. I have a few questions that are not particularly important.
That's good.
How far you've come from your first board meeting.
Well, these
Remember that
are
one?
these are pretty softball policies.
These are the generic.
That's a good one. That's a good one.
Okay, well, I'll kick it off then. Yeah, okay, this is the School Safety Council, School Site Safety Council. You know, I guess I was a little concerned.
What page number?
Starting with 9, the council itself is very small. The principal, teacher, parent, a certificated rep, a classified rep, and a parent, and then other members. And so that's fine. I mean, it's great that we have that broad representation. Where I started getting a little concerned with some of the things that would be in the plan, like guidelines for mental health professionals and some of that other stuff. It's like that seems very specialized. That's on page 15. That seems very specialized to me. Some of these other things that might be contained in the safety plan. That's the one that hit me. The suicide prevention stuff hit me. Gangs, guns. That seems very specialized to have just 2 union reps, a parent and a principal. So maybe I'm not understanding how this is intended to work, but.
Well, first of all, the good news is that the code does not require but encourages. So that's a little wiggle room. Kathy, you read these.
Well, I'm just
more
trying to
than anybody.
motion to Teresa because even though that gave
Teresa,
a
yeah,
very
go ahead.
small description, when I was on the site council meeting, we had at least 6 or more.
Yeah, there's a very specific configuration for schools.
But they did
Is
fit
that what the
those.
question is? The configuration of how the school
Well, the
site
policy
council-
is right. The policy just was for 4 people.
No, it's tied in with the overall size of the school population. Summit doesn't have as big of a school site council.
Right.
But generally, we have about 10 people for the San Antonio, and we have to have equity in favor of parents, and it can be parents and community members. So there's 5 of them, and then there's the principal, classified.
Oh, Michael, you know what? Excuse me for a second.
Council or the-
No, right. There's
System.
2 different things.
Yeah.
The safety planning committee is the 4-person group.
Right.
Okay,
And all
but
of
you're
this stuff is
describing,
delegated.
you're
Okay,
describing.
yeah, okay. No, it's not the school site council that we're talking about.
So that's.
We are.
Yeah, I mean,
We are talking about
They
it.
can delegate all of these things to the safety planning committee, and it's only mandated to be these 4. It can't be more. And then there's like many pages. A lot of this stuff I think is perfectly fine.
Well, I had written on there the possession of firearms, measures to prevent or minimize the gang. Yeah, same thing. I had. Actually, if you go to page 10, it says right under the very first paragraph, before adopting the safety plan, the site council or the safety planning committee shall hold a public meeting at the school in order to allow members of the public the opportunity to express an opinion about the plan. Now, is that? I don't think we did that this year.
No, this is new.
So this is
we
This is
have
new.
not done this before.
Well, right. So many benefits that come from us reviewing our policies. Sometimes we do realize that among the great many that we have that have been revisited for a while, that we're not following to the letter every one of the policies. And so we try to, of course, and when we are made aware of something, we correct it. And so this is an area that is not new language, and it also is required by Ed Code. We looked into it today to see if this could be changed to a may, as far as having to in writing notify the mayor or in writing notify other groups identified. But actually, Ed Code does say that we're supposed to be doing that, so we will do that.
Didn't we have a public hearing before we adopted the safety plan?
So this is actually separate. This is sitting at the site level. The school site council or that safety plan committee is supposed to be the one responsible for in writing notifying those different various stakeholders.
So that does sort of help in terms of you might get
Well, yeah,
more
except that,
experts.
opening a plan for public comment means that there is a plan, right? And so if it's gonna incorporate all of these things, and if it's delegated to the safety planning committee, I think the membership is insufficient for the topics that are potentially able to be assigned to it. Unless we were to say something about, appropriate experts. It just seems like there's a lot to load on what is essentially a civilian committee.
Well, I'm always in favor of taking things out and saying, taking things out and saying may.
Right.
Those are my two favorite things. But basically, I mean, how does this work, Teresa? Don't they usually start with last year's plan and then review it? Or do they start from scratch? Yeah.
The single plan for school achievement?
No, the
safety plan.
Yeah, it's basically very similar from year to year. We update our flow chart for crises are handled, who's in charge of what area. But very little within the body of it changes.
So if you get into some of these more complex topics, is it the practice to bring in experts to talk to the committee about these things?
I would say that has happened.
No, all of these more complex topics are new.
But is there, I hope I'm reading this right, it says to me that there doesn't even have to be a school safety planning committee. It says the school site council may delegate the responsibility.
Correct.
Right? So
And my experience was that the school site council is the one that worked with the principal.
I don't remember having that other layer. I don't think we do. Michael, I don't think we do. I don't know of any school that has two bodies.
No.
Is it? No.
And that's also new language.
So I think it might be moved.
Yeah.
It might be moved.
But there are new, we do need to take note. as
Yeah,
you
well, that's
said,
true, yeah.
There are new things we need to add to the plan that are not currently in the plan.
But the people doing it, I don't think we have to worry about it. And for sure, I can tell you that whenever we get into mental health issues, media call goes to
And that's what I would
Yeah,
assume.
exactly. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Is that?
Yeah.
15 through 30?
I just had a question on the. It's a question. I don't have any comments.
It's not a very good question.
It's not a good question. Yeah.
I can't wait.
This is it's just on the PI in year 4. There's no way to get out of that thing, right? And my concern.
Which page is it?
23. And my concern is we're mandating doing really drastic things.
Right.
And if we can't get out of the spiral, we're forced to do those.
Well, this language has been in No Child Left Behind since it started, pretty much. And the good news is that as long as you have a well-functioning school where people are working together, and you bring all the staff together to talk about the operation of the school, then you don't have to worry about it being a charter or being taken over or firing all the teachers or anything like that.
But that's not what it says.
I know. But that is, well, except it says the options for alternative governance, but you don't have to have alternative governance. You don't absolutely have to, because there are thousands, there are hundreds of schools in California that are in P4 or 5. In fact, there's some districts where the whole district is in P5.
Right. So now I have a comment, because it actually does say, it says that you should continue to implement all the other things which we talked about, and one of the following, And all of them are terrible.
Yeah, but wait a minute, okay, I'm,
Just like, or whatever works.
So it makes fundamental reforms.
number 5, though, is a way of stating what I just said. That
Okay.
essentially, I mean, it does sound hyperbolic, right, the way it's written, but in fact, major restructuring of the school's governance, it just means people get together and decide how they're going to organize themselves in a different way, but all the same people stay. You don't have to fire the teachers, you don't have to fire the principal, you don't have to get a charter school, you just have to get everybody together. But you know, the fact is that at some point in the fairly near future, I hope.
It should go away.
It's supposed to go away, but you know, ESEA, I mean, look, talk about things that are in flux, right? Immigration, transgender issues, and oh, by the way, the entire education department. Right? So that's another thing I'm not gonna worry about. It's not.
Who's going to come and get us, right?
Right, exactly.
Well, you're leaving.
No, Andy, you should not worry about it. None of you should worry about this one. Anyway, thank you.
We have a charter school, so we should be good.
Yeah, so the charter school will have 800 kids in it.
27, well, first of all of this is new, this Title I program improvement. Number 2, reserve and spend at least 10% of its Title I Part A allocation to provide high-quality professional development.
Do that.
We do that, yeah. That's,
We do,
that's been in
10%?
place, yeah. Mhm. We do.
Okay, that's Title I dollars, so that's the number we mentioned earlier, it's about $560,000 a year. So 10%, 50,000, that's 6.
30 through 45.
Yeah, I think we should protect the right to smoke. I just, I think that, kids need to be able to have a cigarette when a test is very stressful.
I remember the days when it was common to have a smoking area in high school.
Nordhoff had one.
Did they?
Oh, yeah. In the 70s?
Yeah, exactly. That's right.
There was a
yeah.
smoking section.
That's
on
actually the
Nordhoff
decade I was referring to.
Yep.
But it
I know
wasn't,
people who used it,
but it
that's
was
why.
hiding.
They were at the corner of the school,
Yeah,
just
there you go.
outside the perimeter. They were
Yeah.
called the Lodies.
It was the stoner wall.
Stoner wall. There you go. All right.
45 through
All right,
60.
Moving on.
I have something on 50. Annually provide mandatory civil rights training for all frontline staff who interact with program applicants. Yeah.
Andy, what have you come
Where's
into
this at?
contact with? Number 2?
Number 2.
On top of page, toward the top of page 50, is that come across your desk and personnel circulars of any kind?
I mean, this is under
Well-
nutrition.
Yeah.
I just saw a civil rights assembly at Nordhoff
But I don't,
on the 25th.
but they're basically saying the people who are serving food at our cafeterias.
Yeah, I'll check with
have
Julie,
some
see
kind
what's
of
Well, check it
training.
out. I have no clue.
And then, of course, there's this new, maybe the poster's not new because it says new wording, okay, on the other side on 51. The U.S. Department of Agriculture's and Justice for All civil rights posters or substitute posters shall be displayed. Just,
Yeah, we'll
find
check.
out.
One more thing for you to-
We'll check.
Nothing else? Page 61 through 75. Maybe start doing bigger chunks.
90?
Through 90? How about we do that, through 90? The rest was, oh, I have something on page 90. Anybody else? Am I stepping on anybody's? Inter-district open enrollment. A student granted inter-district enrollment under other circumstances shall not be required to reapply for readmission, but may be subject to displacement due to excessive enrollment. I feel like if they're there and they've already attended for a couple of years, that they have the right to stay there.
Well, we don't have the problem. We don't, no, okay. So this whole issue of inter-district enrollment has been changed, particularly in the county, because we now have the ability to hold out-of-district students accountable that we didn't have until about 4 years ago. Right? So for discipline, for academic purposes, et cetera. This one is new, though. This has never come up. So shall not be required to reapply for readmission. That I know.
Mm-hmm.
but may be subject to displacement due to assessment. I think it's a non-issue.
But I'd be okay with getting rid of it.
Well, I guess the only, okay, so here's what could happen. So in year one, let's say 2016-17, in a particular grade, we had 7 inter-district students, and then the next year, some students moved in and decided the class size was too big, right, to retain this. But you know what? We'd still give them an opportunity to go to another school.
This is intra, not inter.
No, inter, but we're talking about students, right, but coming in from another place, right?
I'm not seeing that.
Oh, intra-district, I'm sorry, you're right, intra-district.
This is a
well, there you go.
So let's say
child that's in the Myers Oaks residence area and goes to
San
Topa.
Antonio,
Right.
and now San Antonio gets full.
Right.
And this says they'll be sent back even if they've been.
Well, I don't know, I'm trying to think if we've ever even done
Neighborhood
that.
children.
I can't recall.
I guess there's
a
enough
time.
combos that.
Yeah, I mean,
Patients
in our case, we make it work. I'm sorry, thank you, Andy, it was intra-district, thank you.
I think, I've been there since 2008, 2008 for San Antonio. What they've done is, when it gets really full, we always make it work. We've never bounced anybody out.
No, I can't recall we have.
Inter-district.
No, I just can't recall we have.
We just adjust.
Well, I like the part that says, I mean, barring the other issue, which I'm not sure we're on that, but if we can accommodate them, I think it's preferable.
We do.
I do like the idea of expressly saying you don't have to keep applying every year.
Right, oh, no, right. We assume, every time we do staffing, we just move everybody forward.
Okay, anything through the rest of the document?
You always have another shot at it.
Again, I have not a very good question, but it's on 98. And I just thought the wording was a little, it could be read both ways. This is regarding independent study. No course required for high school graduation shall be offered exclusively through independent study. I think what that means is you can't have a required course that is only offered through independent study.
That's why I read it.
But the other way to read it would be that you can't have a course that's all independent study.
Oh, I see what you mean. No course required, as opposed to a student taking a class. You mean have the whole course?
Right.
Right.
I just thought it could be worded better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that it's not.
It is the whole course.
Right.
Right.
Well, right, the whole course, but that's not what it means.
So does it mean that they should have an
That's what I
option for a non-independent study course?
No, I think
What it's saying is that
right.
you cannot make a requirement for graduation that can only be met
Right.
by forcing independent
Right,
study.
that's what I'm saying. Like the senior English, or I mean, whatever.
Yeah.
Exactly. Right. Is that? Did you read it?
Well, no, that's, so the first time I read it the other way, but then when I read it again, I could see that's what it meant.
That's what it means.
But-
That's what it means.
yeah.
I'm sure.
But if somebody's being a jerk about it like me.
No, I'm sure that's what it means.
I do have one on 110.
And then, okay.
And I think I've kind of brought this up at our budget study session. So this is children with disabilities enrolled by their parents in private school. I've provided parts of 5 and 6 and the second to last paragraph. A written explanation of the reasons that the district chose not to provide the services. I mean, have we ever done that? How services will be apportioned if funds are insufficient to serve all the identified children, and how and when those decisions will be made? I get kind of back into that. How do they prove to us that they deserve our funds? How do we see if?
Andy spent a lot of time in special ed, so I'll let him talk about it. But the general concept is that you have to go through that whole least restrictive environment process. Okay, so we start from the classroom. We then go to what you might call an STC, right? In our own situation, you might go then to the county program, and then in very few cases, I think we found out last time, we're down to 0, right? We have 0 private work. Out of state private places. We have one.
Well, out of state, no, you
No,
correct.
we
We
have
have no out of
one
state.
in state, not 0 out of state. So we're in a great place. But how would you?
Okay, so this is not
Well,
referring
yeah.
to students at
How would you
Villanova.
address that?
by private school?
No, actually it is. So I think that we're talking about two slightly different things. The non-public school placement is separate from this, which is the students who are enrolled in private school by their parents' election. So not the IEP actually necessitated it, but rather that they are districts within or students within our district boundaries who are enrolling in private schools. And the question is, what obligation do we have to those students?
Right.
And again, this only applies to federal dollars, not state dollars, but for federal dollars, we do have an obligation to identify what the prorated share. So let's say Villanova has 3 students who are students of the district of residents is Ojai Unified. We do a prorated calculation to determine what the value of the amount to those students would be, and we provide Villanova with various services to meet that value.
And so, but it says we should basically recount these students every October.
Correct, we do have to, absolutely. Yeah, we have to provide it. It goes to the state and likely to the feds.
And then how would you explain the final paragraph? the one at the bottom of the page.
Well, again, different amount of services, that's certainly true. We're not required to have the state funding and the same level of full IEP services that a student that's within our district would be receiving. That's absolutely true.
I had another question, and this is just because, I guess because I'm ignorant, but on page 102, the whole section that's crossed out on course-based independent study, I just have no idea what that means. What is that talking?
Let me take a look at 1 second. The numbers 1 and 2 at the bottom?
That whole section that's crossed out?
Yeah, I'm looking at course-based.
You're
I know exactly. Like how many times have I
well,
said
then it's good it's crossed out.
Well, and that's why John said it doesn't apply.
Yeah, when you're writing these things for districts from Ojai to Los Angeles, you sort of wonder how could any set of policies apply to everybody. I don't know
It must mean something to somebody.
Well, I'm glad he crossed it out. I don't know.
Okay. 7.5.9, superintendent's report. It's 9 o'clock.
I know, that's my rule. So actually, this is short, but hopefully applicable, and this is a little bit of a challenge. And I try to make my comments related to things we've talked about recently, and recently could even be tonight, and I'm going to go back a month before tonight, and then tonight, and then on through the next session, which now looks like it might be the end of April. So, we're justifiably proud of our arts program. And we've seen recently just a fabulous drama production of Steel Magnolias. We've seen dance and music in Greece. We know about the dance program exclusive of Greece. We know about the music program tonight, K-12. I think the one area that deserves some conversation is the fine arts. Particularly elementary. We have a program available for Attila. It might be exactly the scope that it should be. I understand the wheel, but I've never done it, so it might be worth having Javier Carroll come talk about it, or Kate come and talk about the art program as it relates to Attila. We have Kate, we have Ray at the high school. But that which we had prior to 7th grade is all volunteer. And I think it's worth conversing. I've raised this with OEF. I didn't get a real strong response, but at least I want to get on their plate. But I certainly want to have this group talk about it with the elementary principals, what it would look like to fund some element of an elementary art program, fine arts. As you said, it's an arts community, and it's not just music and dance and drama. It is art, and it might be an interesting post 12 years tribute to Linda to at least talk about it, because I think the same concept applies. And the best musicians, when they're somewhere between 15 and 17, are those who started when they were between 9 and 11. right? And so the artists I saw, for example, in the week of Nordhoff, where they had all their snack and lunch programs, some wonderful art, but those students were not trained by a district-funded person, right, in this school district. So I'd like to have you think about that a little bit, and I'd like to. Andy and I are going to be going to an ELT meeting pretty soon. I'd like to have that on the agenda. And one of the issues, of course, is that as you add electives, it's called electives, to the elementary program, you are then creating a challenge for all the other academic time, right, that the teachers who cover so many academic areas need to have with their students. So I'm not saying I don't have an answer. To me, it's a question, and it seems like a gap in a program that deserves at least a little bit of conversation as the 17-18 budget is being discussed. Okay, so that's my one subject, quick item for you to think about.
Well, and I go back to, when I was in school, we didn't have an art teacher. The teacher just taught us art.
Got that.
But our days, I think that these requirements, this Common Core, even before Common Core, the stuff that Angie's doing in kindergarten, it's ridiculous. Kindergarten should be about finger paint and building blocks. And,
for example, though, you don't have to, it doesn't have to be time. I gave you a challenge. It doesn't have to be time away from regular instruction. But if the classroom teacher continues to be the predominant delivery person for art, having someone come in to support that individual, that could be a wonderful addition to the program. Whether it's in the classroom or art check or whatever it is, we're pretty serendipitous right now in terms of the kind of art experience that our students have. And some teachers are great at it, and some are less great at it.
Well, no, I think I was saying is the reason that they could do it when I was growing up was because the actual, what was put on them from the state level was not as.
Yeah, less so. So, it's just, I think it's worth
honestly
talking about.
wondered the same thing if we couldn't have an art program that resembles the music and
Well, it may not be
at
that
a
big,
district level.
but it'd be nice to start. Like I said, we do have, if you sort of look at a parallel, we have the junior high and high school, but nothing elementary.
My other thought, though, on the flip side is I feel like we are a very art-focused district. And I feel like there's a swath of students, especially at the high school level, who are missing out because that isn't their focus. And we have gotten away from, I'm thrilled that the welding is coming, will be enhanced. Woodshop is gone from junior high and high school. Those more hands-on,
right,
engineering type mindset, they're not, we are very art heavy already. In different realms. If you look at the broad understanding of art.
I do think CTE will, over a period of time, get the more hands-on things, not art, not pure art. I'm not really talking about the high school right now because we have such a challenge already with 700 students and all the single classes we have, and having students get access to it because there's only one period here, one period there. I'm really talking about the younger students. I'd love to have them have the classroom teachers who have so much to do already have some trained support in that area. If they don't do music, well, something I guess they do music, but the program was you do music before the fourth grade, right? So you do music because I've seen it hundreds of times. But wherever we started, I'd love to have at least a consideration of a 20% or a 40% person to intersect with our faculty at the elementary level in art. That's all.
And I'm wondering if we could do more in terms of structured outreach to like studio artists or something, because we probably have more professional fine artists per capita in our community than almost anywhere in the world.
I agree. I couldn't agree more. The issue though is some great artists are not great teachers of 9-year-olds.
Right.
I'll just leave it at that.
And I don't blame them.
And don't argue with me because I know I'm right.
Yeah, I think it's important though to recognize, like, at least at TOPA, that you have, my wife spends literally hundreds of hours teaching art.
Yeah.
So we have people, and she's a trained artist, and she has a degree in art. And so that is happening to a large extent, at least at TOPA. I mean, that's what they're doing.
San Antonio,
that's
they
how
have,
they're learning art, is people are coming in, docents are coming in from the outside, and it's funded by the PTA. They have a whole art room there. They've got a big warehouse, basically, of art supplies. As a board, we should probably educate ourselves about it and make sure that we're adequately aware of and appreciative of all that.
Oh yeah, that's why my comment was I'm wondering what we're doing.
Yeah, a lot of that's going on.
Right.
Yeah.
And I would piggyback on that the part that I feel like is lacking at that age is science. And the hands-on science experiments at the elementary level are, am I wrong? They're hard to come by.
I think that's true.
I don't want to admit to that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Science, let's put it this way, I think there's an agreement nationally that teachers who have 5 disciplines or 4 disciplines to teach, somewhere before the 6th grade or the 7th grade, depending on whether you have middle school or junior high, that the most challenging academic area is science, no question. So, maybe that's as good an investment as art. I was just thinking about the arts program, and we're justifiably proud. And I couldn't disagree at all with what you said. When I say serendipitous, that's a little bit of what I mean. That you have this outstanding person who happens to have a child at that school, and the PTA happens to value that, and it's always going to be unequal. I'm okay with that, but I think there's some statement that from the board that we are so excited about these other genres within the arts program. This one, I think, at least merits a little conversation. But I agree with you on the academic side. That's for sure right. Science is the most challenging.
Science is hard, I would say, to have hands-on science experiments in the elementary ages, no?
It is because you need a lot of supplies, and then those supplies have to be brought back. You just have to keep buying the supplies, and there could be things just like cups or simple things where you have to keep getting them, and then it's very difficult to do science experiments when there's one teacher and many kids, and trying to get to every group and make sure that they're not doing something they shouldn't be doing. And it's really more about, I have a cupboard filled with science experiments for small children or kids all the way kindergarten through 6th grade, but I can't do it by myself. It's really more about having more people under it.
And that's actually, Kevin, I think a lot we don't recognize. I know that when my kids were in 4th, 5th, and 6th, that's one of the things that there was a handful of 3 parents that we went and got the supplies. We when the kids were out at recess, we set up the room so and the kids came in and the teacher was teaching and we stayed and helped eat. There were 3 parents in the room. There was 3 parents at the grade. So in my classroom, I would say, and that's not happening in Miramani perhaps, or maybe it is, but.
Science.
Okay.
Shelley's science.
Well, and I have to say, the new generation science standards is emerging. It's unclear, but by 2020, that will be the discipline that will change the most. Right? K-12. So in fact, I had a great conversation with Brenda Ferrand and Jim Locke about what life's going to be like for the teachers of 7th through 12th grade science, particularly junior high. The 7th and 8th grade programs are completely changing.
Well, and doesn't that really mean 6th through 8th grade?
Yes, it does.
Okay, just checking.
As I continue to remind people of that.
I like the idea of using an empty classroom. We have a lot of empty classrooms. Why not make a classroom a dedicated space to science, so that all the supplies are there, and then you're hiring somebody to do the science, so that you bring, instead of like the music program, but you're bringing the kids in to do science. And,
Oh,
but
yeah,
then
that
I
would
might feel that way
be-
because I love to teach art, so.
We did that, yeah, that
would-
was.
would it, you know,
Work like on an art track style where the supplies are there and you have docents who come in and bring it to the classroom and do an experiment with the kids.
You might have to
and
be a
then-
little more careful with science.
Well,
Yeah, or you could have,
exactly.
or you could have a 40% or a 60% person who's in charge of that room, right?
Right.
Doing something like that where their people are going in to
Right.
the room and parents are coming in supporting them.
The sad side to me was going up to those classrooms at TOPA and knowing that the cupboards are full of really exciting science experiments and there's dust on them because who can do it?
I agree with that, that's true.
So
That's what you should talk about in late April.
Okay. So that kind of combines superintendents and items for future agendas, I guess.
Actually, I have
Another item?
Yeah, I think that we should consider now, as early as possible, talking about a parcel tax based on what I'm seeing in our budget.
For 18?
Yeah,
2018?
exactly. And I even think we should
Right time to
consider
start.
doing it, and if we lose, then maybe that's like you gotta get the loss in the hopper.
don't we have a loss in the hopper?
We do. The next time we well, it was a bond, that was a
No, there
parcel
were
tax.
two parcel taxes
Yeah.
lost, yeah. But the second one was close.
That's very close.
It was very close.
But I mean, I think, the reality is that with our declining enrollment and the reality of, the cost of living and what a reasonable teacher's salary actually amounts to, I think.
And the $15 an hour coming down the pike.
Yeah, exactly. I think we should consider doing it, and maybe doing it, maybe on the cheap, maybe not hiring some expensive consultant, maybe, I don't know, but we should talk about it.
Does it help us or hurt us that it's not on the presidential?
The jury's out on that.
Okay.
It's, generally, you think that the people who come out of the non-presidential years are the people who are more motivated for whatever reason to come out, so.
This year, that might
It'll be a
lot of
new
people.
gubernatorial election
Right,
with
that's
a new top two. Also, they're saying that in general that it should be a more liberal leaning group that'd be coming out at a gubernatorial.
But it's the right time, because as you work back, you have to have the language on the ballot in August, right?
I believe so.
Is that what it is? August? I think it's August for the November ballot. Anyway, but the point is, it becomes something to talk about in the spring into the fall of 17, which then becomes.
To act on it in the early 18.
Exactly. I mean, you can't wait till September to start explaining it.
Okay. Any other items of future agendas? I did have someone mention to me, have you guys ever discussed moving the junior high to the high school?
Wait a minute.
7 through 12.
Where does the high school go? Oh.
So that you have more electives, because you keep talking about needing more students to have
Okay.
more electives.
Oh. No, we haven't talked about that.
Then you have the junior high property to
Careful, someone's gonna take a
repurpose.
picture and do a Hillary.
Okay, consent calendar. Any
That was one I
questions
wasn't
or?
expecting.
I'll move to approve.
We have a second?
I'll second. Shelley got it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. None opposed. Thank you.
Thank you.
See you in
Thank
2
you.
weeks.